I'd like to call to order the March 16th Planning and Zoning Board meeting for the City of Fort Lauderdale. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Can we please call the roll, Leslie?
Yes. Jacqueline Scott?
Present.
John Polanco? I see you're looking for your name tag. William Rotella? Sherry McCartney?
Here.
Madam
Here.
Clerk, please speak in the mic.
Just to go backwards, Jacqueline Scott in attendance, John Barranco in attendance, William Rotella absent, Sherry McCartney in attendance, Steve Gannon in attendance, Michael Wymel,
Here.
Jay Scheckman,
Present.
Brad Cohen. And sir, you're present, correct? Thank you. Mary Fertig, absent. Okay. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Let me begin by introducing the board members individually. To my left is Mr. Brad Cohen. To my right is Mr. Jay Scheckman. To his right is Mr. Michael Weymouth. Downstairs in the front, we have Sherry McCartney, Mr. John Barranco, and Mr. Steve Gannon. Staff members here tonight, we have Ella Parker, who is the Urban Design and Planning Manager. And we have Leslie, I don't know your last name, Leslie.
Harmon.
Leslie Harmon, who is our recording secretary. Ella, do you want to go ahead and please introduce the staff members that are here this evening?
Absolutely. Chair, tonight with us from staff, we have Dwayne Spence, Assistant City Attorney, Shari Wallen, Assistant City Attorney, Jim Hetzel, Mike Ferreira, Nick Colargeros from the Planning Department, and Ishvan Birag from Transportation Mobility, and Orlando Aram from Engineering, and Adam Schnell from Planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. And let the record reflect, Leslie, that Mr. Bill Rotella is now present. Everyone received their minutes from our February meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve.
I had one correction, and I'm actually filling out the voting conflict. I conflicted out on one of the cases there, and I didn't see this attached. I don't believe I filled one out, so.
Okay, it's not reflective in the minutes, you're saying.
It was not reflected in the, well, it was reflected in the minutes that I filled one out, but I don't believe I did.
No, I don't get them.
Okay, I don't know if that, Dwayne or Shari, did you hear that?
Yes, you can modify the minutes to reflect that the member will complete the voting conflict form to be attached to the minutes.
Okay,
I think the contention is that the minutes states that the form was completed versus that it will be completed and added to the minutes as required by law.
okay. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Dwayne. Anyone here this evening that plans on testifying, we'd like to go ahead and swear you in. So if you'd be kind enough to stand up so the city attorney can swear you in.
Please stand and raise your right hand if you're going to speak to the board tonight. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Everyone that wishes to speak this evening will have 3 minutes to speak. Unless you're representing a neighborhood, you'll get 5 minutes, and the applicants will get 15 to 20 minutes. So I just wanted to set the rules for everyone. The first case tonight is going to be, hold on. Okay, our first agenda item tonight is a requested deferral by the city for UDP-V21004. Would the board like to make a motion to
Motion to defer.
defer?
Second.
Okay, it was made by Mr. Weymouth, seconded by Sherry? Okay, already. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The second case on the agenda is UDP-V21005. Staff is requesting a deferral. And these deferrals are till our May 18th meeting, I believe? Yeah, both these items are deferred to May 18th.
Move to
Does someone
defer.
want to make a motion to defer?
Move to defer.
Second.
Who seconded? Did you get that, Leslie?
No, I didn't.
Who
have a
seconded the
second.
motion,
That was
please?
Michael.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Michael did? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to defer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we will begin this evening with case number 3, UDP-P21005. Is there someone here from the applicant?
Do you want to do disclosures?
Is there, before we begin, do we have disclosures from the board? Starting with you, Mr. Weymouth, on case
Site
number
visit.
3.
Site visit.
Site visit.
None.
Site visit, Steve Gannon.
Bill Rotella, site visit.
John Bronco?
None.
Sherry?
None.
None for me as well. Thank you all very much. Okay, the applicant, you have 15 minutes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jana Loda. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Holland & Knight with offices at 515 East Las Olas, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Here tonight on behalf of the applicant and property owner. I see you have a pretty full house, so I'll try to be very quick. The item before you this evening is a fairly simple boundary plat for the property located at 155 North Federal Highway. It's approximately 0.71 acres. It is being requested for a plat note of 3,000 square feet of commercial use. I believe that it has all of the comments that DRC have been addressed, and it's before you for your review and approval. As the backup noted, it is proposed for about a 2,500 square foot automatic car wash, which is presently being reviewed by staff right now. But again, the item that's before you tonight is the boundary plat that is seeking approval of a commercial use at this time. And we respectfully request your recommendation in favor to the City Commission. If you have any questions, I do have the surveyor, who is the agent on the plat, available to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll start with Mr. Weymouth. He has a question.
So is this an unmanned car wash? Is this something that's open 24 hours a day?
The hours of operation are daylight hours, 7:30 to roughly 6:30 p.m. It is a nominal amount of staff there. It is a touchless car wash. You do not enter the cars, touch the cars. There will be about probably 3 employees, basically just to keep the site clean and tidy and guide the vehicles into the tunnel. It is a drag line car wash.
Mr. Scheckman.
Hi. So we don't actually get the reason that the plat came to us in the first place. So can you explain to us why you needed to replat this property?
The property is presently unplatted, and under the applicable rules, in order to pull a building permit for a principal building, we must plat the property.
Okay. And when you've platted the property, in this case, did you indicate where the structure will be on the site?
Again, there is a concurrent site plan application at the city. Anyone who wants more specific information on the actual improvements can certainly ask staff. Again, we're proposing about a 2,500 square foot car wash. It's going to be oriented roughly in a north-south orientation with all the active uses on the east side of the building oriented towards Federal Highway.
So to what extent does the plat that's before us determine where the structure will be located?
No, No.
None whatsoever?
No.
Okay.
It's just approving the plat that will allow us to pull a building permit once the site plan is approved, and provides for the access opening and provides for the square footage allocation to allow the development to proceed. That's why the 3,000 square foot note for commercial.
Okay, so that answers my question. I'll have some questions for staff.
Okay, is there any other questions of the applicant?
I just have a quick question. Is there any cross-access between this property and the adjoining property?
Yes, the FDOT, in connection with their review of the plat at the county and the city, had requested that there be a future cross-access provided for the parcel, I believe, to the south. It is the parcel that actually wraps our property to the south and to the west. That is a future access opening if, in fact, it ever is needed to provide that cross-access.
Any more questions from the board? Okay,
I've got a quick one if I can, Madam Chair, real quick.
please, go ahead.
Is part of this application doing a median cut for northbound traffic into the property?
No, I don't believe any median improvements are being proposed other than what's existing on Federal Highway.
Okay.
I
Jay,
guess,
you had a question for staff?
yeah, I mean, yes. I have a question for staff, Ella, or whoever.
Nicholas Greek man, I think.
I see Nick is coming up to the mic.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board.
Hi, Nicholas. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So one of the issues that we've talked about consistently on this board is concerns and frustrations with Chick-fil-A and the Starbucks, which obstruct traffic on Federal Highway and have actually made the driving conditions quite dangerous. So can you just make it clear for us that approving this plat tonight would not necessarily, make any other, it has nothing to do with the consideration of the amount of traffic coming in and out of Federal Highway
Correct.
or where the building will be situated on the plot?
The plat is just a boundary plat to actually plat the land, and which is a Broward County requirement.
Okay, and the plans that are concurrent with this plat approval, where are they currently in the process of review?
Currently, they're in review. It's gone through DRC, and it's currently on review by staff, but we do check things such as adequacy to make sure that it adheres to all the requirements of the ULDR.
Okay. And so it already went through DRC, or it's just been submitted?
In review.
It's been submitted and awaiting sign-offs?
Correct.
Okay. Very well. I think that's it. I think, I brought to light the concern that everybody has as you're reviewing that. We need to be very particular about, building up traffic on Federal and where buildings are laid out on the site, and if there's enough room for that. Thank you.
Nick, I have one question.
Yes.
I think I know the answer, but I'll ask you. When these folks come to get their permits, et cetera, to build this site, will it come back to us?
It will not. It's actually a site plan level 1.
Okay, so we're here purely for the plat.
Even though
Thank
it's
you.
on the waterway?
It's not on a waterway.
This is not on the waterway?
No, it's not.
Okay. Does the board wish to make the staff report part of the record?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to go ahead now and open this to the public. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this item?
It was, Michael, you seconded, right?
Jay made the,
I made the motion and Michael seconded it.
Thank you.
okay, there's no one here to speak about this, so we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Does anybody have any questions or want to make a motion?
Motion to approve
Second.
with staff conditions.
That's John Barranco, and Brad, you seconded? Brad Cohen, second. Okay, is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes.
Yes.
Jay Scheckman,
Yes.
John Baranco,
Yes.
Michael Wymouth,
Yes.
Sherry McCartney,
Yes.
Steve Gannon,
Yes.
William Rotella,
Yes.
Jacqueline Scott.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thanks for
You all.
coming.
Have a good evening.
With your permission, Board, I'm going to skip right now to item number 7, so that I think that's going to be a fairly quick item, and we want to go there next. Okay. Next will be case number UDP-T22003. And who is here for the applicant?
Good evening, Nectaria Chakas with the firm Lockery and Chakas on behalf of New River Center Maintenance Association. We're before you this evening for the establishment of a sign district, which is permitted under your ULDR. Under the ULDR, as long as 60% of the merchants fronting on a street can petition the city to establish a sign district, and then those sign district requirements then become part of the code. And so what's in front of you this evening is the establishment of the boundaries of that sign district, as well as the signage regulations that would go along with it. The sign district itself is the area on the aerial that I have up on the screen right now. It's highlighted in yellow. It's the area that encompasses the Hyatt Centric off of Las Olas Boulevard, the office building that's located on the corner of Northeast 3rd Street and Las Olas Boulevard, the new Alluvian apartment building that was just developed by Stiles, and then the Las Olas River House Condominium Association. All of these properties were actually part of a Florida Quality Development. It was, I believe, only one of 2 developments that was a master plan community called a Florida Quality Development. It's established under Florida law back in the 80s. It was also platted as under one plat. So there was an intent to create this sort of master plan community for this particular territory. The actual right-of-way that you see that travels down the center of the district, Las Olas Way is what we commonly refer to that as. It's actually owned by the New River Center Maintenance Association. A lot of people don't know that that road is actually a private road, and there's an easement, ingress and egress easement, that the owners granted to the city for purposes of vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic. The district, the owners wanted to install a monument sign at the corner of Las Olas Way and East Las Olas Boulevard. So it's actually would be on Las Olas Way, but visible from East Las Olas Boulevard. And that sign would advertise the businesses that are within the areas of the yellow boundary line, the New River Center sign district. So in order to do that, we had to establish this sign district. It is considered an off-premises sign, so the only way to allow this monument sign would be to establish a sign district. And so that's what's in front of you this evening. This is just a plat, the old plat of the property that shows that these properties were all platted under one plat with different parcels. So there was an intent that this had a common development plan and sort of a master plan community, unlike other areas of the downtown. And then this is a rendering of what the sign looks like. The sign not only will advertise the businesses that are within this particular sign district, but we've also added another area where we can advertise the Riverwalk Linear Park as a wayfinding sign. And you can actually see that the sign itself pays homage to the logo of the Riverwalk Trust. I think Gina is here. We included a letter in your backup materials that is a support letter from the Riverwalk Trust. They're in full support of this sign district. So there is not only a private purpose to this particular sign district, but there's also a public purpose to the sign district. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, before we go into questions from the applicant, I'd like to do the disclosures, which I forgot to do when we started. So do we have disclosures on this item? Starting with, I guess, Mary?
You don't need the disclosures on this one because it's amending the ULDR.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sherry. Okay, does anyone have questions for the applicant's attorney? Jay?
So with the new sign district that's established, are the rules of the sign district in line with what the city's general signage rules are?
It is, and in fact, the actual sign district says that this sign is allowed in addition to other signs on the property that would have to comply with the city's code, the ordinary city code. So each building has its own signage in front of their actual property, but that sign would need to comply with the city's current ULDR.
Okay, so all of the signs proposed and currently comply with the city's ULDR.
That's correct. This sign is a separate sign that without this sign district would not be permitted, so that's why we're establishing.
Only
this sign.
because it's under jurisdiction that the city doesn't.
It's considered an off-premises sign because it's
Right.
on land that is owned by the New River Center Maintenance Association.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions from the applicant? Okay, thank you very much. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to open the public hearing if anyone would like to speak on this topic. So no one's here to speak on this. Okay, let's close the public hearing. Does the board wish to make the staff report part of the record?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second to make that staff report part of the record? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Bill Rotella makes a motion to approve.
You say it at the same time?
And Brad said it
Second.
at the same time. Are you seconding it, Brad?
I'll second it.
Brad Cohen seconds the motion. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Yes.
Bronco,
Yes.
Mary Fartig, Michael Weymouth,
Yes.
Sherry McCartney,
Yes.
Steve Gannon,
Yes.
William Rotella,
Yes.
Jacqueline Scott.
Yes, and the motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda will be item number 4, UDP-S20018, Site Plan Level 3 Review. And we have Stephanie Toothaker for the applicant.
Want to do the disclosures?
Is there any disclosures from the board?
Bill Rotella spoke with applicant's counsel.
Steve Gannon?
None.
Mr. Bronco?
Spoke with applicant's counsel and did receive some communication through the city on some of their concerned neighbors.
Ms. McCartney?
I spoke with the applicant's counsel as well.
Okay. Mr. Weymouth?
I spoke with the applicant, traded texts with the applicant's counsel, did a site visit, and also received communications through the city.
Mr. Scheckman?
I've spoken with the applicant's counsel, neighborhood residents, the applicant, over the course of, however long they've been pursuing.
I'm sorry.
Throughout the course of however long they've been pursuing this endeavor.
Okay. Mr. Cohen?
Spoke with applicant's counsel and site visit.
Mary Furtick?
Applicants, I spoke with Ms. Toothaker. I visited the site. I've spoken with several residents over the course of however long and received communications from the city. And
Okay.
I think got one other email that wasn't from the city, that was a letter from a resident in support.
I spoke to the applicant's attorney, and I also spoke to some folks from Riverwalk.
I'm sorry,
So-
I have to add that too. Thank you.
I have to as well. I also spoke with Riverwalk.
Okay.
Steve Gannon, I need to amend mine. I spoke with applicant's attorney.
Okay. I think we have this. How much time do you need on this?
I'm going to, we have a presentation that includes a couple of people, so if it's okay, I'm going to ask for 20 minutes and I will endeavor
Okay.
not to use it.
Let me just set that up, and you can begin.
Thank you. Before I begin, I'm Stephanie Toothaker. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to turn it over to Asi for a few minutes and a few comments.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Asi Symbol. I'm the developer and the owner of the site, along with my business partner, Hector Torres. Hector, who's in the room? As many of you know, I've owned this site for over a decade. We've been working to get this right for a very, very long time. We received your approval 10 years ago, and we are grateful for it. But we realized that there is a much better way to develop this community. We're coming before you now because we are ready to build the project that this city deserves. When I first saw this property 12 years ago, I saw the potential for making a huge and positive impact on this city. It was one of the last meaningful sites on the water on a neglected south side of the New River. When we bought the site, we wanted to understand everything that we could about this city and this neighborhood. So I personally moved into the Esplanade condominium, our neighbor to the west, and lived there for 2 years. That's when I met many of you on this board and many of you here in the room tonight. I want to emphasize that we are not your typical developer. We are here before you because we care about architecture, about design, about the environment, sustainability, technology, art, public space, and landscaping. We also care about being good neighbors. So while the overwhelming majority of our neighbors love what we are creating, we heard from some that we should make material changes to the project to better protect their views, better address traffic, parking, height, density, and we made those very, very significant changes. We spent a lot of time and resources to protect our beautiful rain tree, and we are now moving it to the Riverwalk where it can be better appreciated. We hired the best tree preservationist in the world to do that, and the best arborist to do that, who's here, Jeff. And I even put up $1 million of my own money as security for the move. We care about the marine industry and celebrating Fort Lauderdale as the boating capital of the world. While most developers have come to you with plans to demolish marine uses along the water, we're here to honor and improve on those marine uses. We care about the Riverwalk. We're investing a lot of money into building the Riverwalk in front of our project, creating open public spaces, creating the Rain Tree Park there, and bringing activity to a long dormant Riverwalk with shops and restaurants. We may even own and operate some of these restaurants ourselves because we want this district that we are creating to be the model Riverwalk district in downtown Fort Lauderdale. The project before you tonight reflects all of our efforts. We're also not here to slap up a building, sell it, squeeze every dime out of it, and run to our next project. We had many opportunities to cash out big on this property and move on. Do you know how many developers have come to me with huge offers for our property? A lot. We didn't sell and cash out because we are committed to a much bigger picture here. For us, this is about legacy, and this is about impact. We're putting our heart and soul into creating this community. We're doing that as the builder and the general contractor, as well as being the owner and developer. And we're keeping these buildings for many generations to come. We will make a meaningful and positive contribution to this city for a very long time. We're also moving our corporate headquarters from Wynwood into this project. I am moving my family to Broward County from Miami to be closer to downtown Fort Lauderdale and to our new headquarters. My business partner, Hector, who's a resident of downtown Fort Lauderdale, is moving his family into the project. We've assembled a world-class team to design and execute on what we believe will ultimately be a game changer for our city. We have spent over a decade building relationships within this community. I want to acknowledge everyone on our team and all of our supporters in the community who are here tonight, and I invite them to stand up and show your support. So everyone who's worked on this project, everyone here who's supporting our project, I want to thank all of you. Thank you for that. We are committed to making a huge and positive impact on the city with this community that we are creating. I promise you that when we are done, we will all be proud of what we created together. Thank you.
Thank you, Asi. I may need a few more minutes than 20. So thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. Asi and I started this journey together in 2013. As he said, this is a property that has an approved site plan on it. After we sat through about 7-hour hearing here at the Planning and Zoning Board and then continued that at that time onto the City Commission and received approval. And the site plan that was originally approved for the project is still a viable project. That means that the units that were allocated to that project still are attached to the land. And as Asi said, we're very excited to present a new site plan. Before I begin, I just want to make a point of, you saw that we have a lot of support in the room, but I want to make a point of introducing the folks on the team. You met Hector already. David Udine is also with Symbol Development. Also, we have Joe Palma with Palma Architects. Joe designed the project. We also have, even though we're not talking about the tree tonight because the City Commission has already made a decision on the relocation of the tree, and that's not part of what's before you, but we do have Paul Cox and Jeff Sinofsky, who are our tree experts and can answer questions if you have any regarding that. We also have Abby with Keith and Associates, who's here and part of the team. Joaquin Vargas is our traffic and parking consultant, and I think I got everybody. So let me just jump in. So I know you're familiar with the property. It is in the Tarpon River. Tarpon River's changed a lot since we started this journey, right? My office is literally right behind this property, and most recently the city actually approved a project called River Lofts that sits immediately behind it. So that really shapes the tone and the discussion about what this area, this little piece of Tarpon River, is really meant to be. It is in the Downtown Regional Activity Center, and the project that Asi did the first time around was one of the first projects to be approved here, but now there's a lot of activity in this area, and that's a good thing. It's exciting. It makes it a true live, work, play. So it is zoned Regional Activity Center SMU, which is intended to preserve marine-related uses, promote mixed-use development, and support the RAC CC district while blending with the Tarpon River community, which we believe this project does. It is in the downtown master plan area, but I think it's really important for you to understand that the project was submitted prior to the adoption of the downtown master plan. So we did really make an effort to comply with that downtown master plan, but it does not apply. So this project, and your staff report notes that, actually travels under the ULDR prior to the adoption of the downtown master plan. So this is the prior project that was approved. You can see Esplanade on the left, and you can see the two buildings that were previously approved and the building that was approved as also where the marina sits today. It was the buildings sat between 28 and 33 stories. It was 856 of the 2006 RAC units. Now the projects that get approved pull flex units from the pool, but this was one of the projects that actually got approved under the prior RAC units, and it included roughly 20,000 square feet of retail and almost 12,000 square feet of restaurant. You can see in this image, and I'm going to stop here for a minute, if you look behind the existing marina, you can see that was the original proposed location of the tree. We really felt, and Asi even renamed the project Rain Tree Riverwalk Residences, to really pay homage to the tree and celebrate the tree. So as I said, that this is still, the original site plan is still a viable site plan, but we are, as you know, here this evening looking for a revised site plan. I think it's really important to know that we spent, as Asi said, a lot of time in the community. We know that, there's some strong feelings as it relates to the tree in particular, and we spent a lot of time having various conversations with all of the different stakeholders, and we think that was really important. That included Esplanade, Tarpon River Civic Association, Sailboat Bend Civic Association, the Downtown Fort Lauderdale Civic Association, Riverwalk Trust, all the property owners within 300 feet. We did public participation meetings. We had some meetings that the district commissioner also held with the residents, and then there were smaller groups of residents that were focused on other things that they felt were really important to the community. And as Asi said, we did make a lot of changes in response to those list of concerns. So we did voluntarily go to the Historic Preservation Board because it is directly across the river from us, and they didn't take a vote, but we went on October 5th, and it's basically due to the distance between the north elevation and the historic district. We felt they stated that they felt that the project would have minimal adverse effects, so we felt it was a very positive meeting. We also went to the Marine Advisory Board, particularly focused on the tree because of the location of the tree. And the comments that we got back from the Marine Advisory Board were that they wanted us to ensure that boats with tall masts and things of that sort wouldn't park under the tree. And so we included all of that. We have some voluntary restrictions that include how to address that, and I think they were satisfied that we addressed those. So this is what's so exciting about this project. You know, the tree has been sitting behind a fence for a very long period of time, and now it's an opportunity to bring that out to the Riverwalk and really celebrate it with this mixed use, make it part of the Riverwalk and make it part of the project, so that today, after this happens, you know, you can walk down the Riverwalk, you can enjoy it, you can come down the boat in a river, you can enjoy it, you can sit across the river in the historical district, and you can enjoy the beautiful architecture, the mixed use, and the activity, and then you have a celebration of the tree. So some pretty significant differences between the prior project and our original DRC application and where we ended up. So the prior project, as I noted, was significantly larger. The original DRC submission for this project, we submitted at 784 units, and we were asking for a 43% parking reduction. We went through a second round of DRC review, and we reduced that to 771 units, and reduced the parking reduction, added parking to 39.41, and that was one of the things that the neighbors felt pretty strongly about. They said that they really wanted us to meet a ratio of 1.4 parking spaces per unit, so that's what we did. We shaved the building even more, both in height and in density, and the building that's before you, the buildings that are before you this evening, are at 677 units, and we met that ratio that the neighbors asked us for, which was that 1.4, which reduced the parking reduction to 19.85. I am just, while this is playing, this just shows you obviously that society across the water from us. I'm going to ask Joe Palma to come up and talk to you about the project, and then I've got some closing remarks, and particularly as it relates to the Riverwalk and some other things that I need to share with you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Joe Palma. We are the architects. Seems like we only have about 7 minutes for the architect, so I'll try and go through this relatively quickly. So as Stephanie had mentioned, the project actually got reconfigured based on its aspect in order to allow more daylight into the public right-of-way of what the Riverwalk experience is. Where previously you had that long, almost relentless facade, now you have two buildings that are actually opening up an aperture of both an experience of daylight throughout the day as well as views from across from the historic district. So this is superimposing where we were previously with the red and where we are now, where we're able to create these view corridors, which we think are critical in creating better daylight and more activity in what is being placed here for public uses and spaces. Overall, the design was actually inspired by a coral rock. As you can see, the articulation of the building, the way it's creating this texture it's almost like it's shaped by water, for obvious reasons, being in proximity to the river. Its location is obviously one of the great elements of how the building enables you to connect to the surrounding skyline as well as to the immediate neighbors with proper oriented modules within the building, which is not orthogonal but skewed, as you see here from the aerial view. It was important for us to consider, as you see here in the illustrative site plan, how to be sensitive and not clutter traffic, and we were wanting to really not have vehicular congestion, and we limited how entry points for vehicles are and how the public entry points into the buildings are really off of the great landscape that you will see in the presentation. So here's the vehicular connectivities, pedestrian connectivities, and the service access, which is really the back of house to where we are between the two buildings. The landscape has been a very important part, as Ozzie mentioned earlier. We work very closely with our colleagues in creating a really great interactive landscape that can also incorporate the public art and destinations that are really active throughout the day, including evenings. The adjoining connection between landscape and what we're calling the interior uses of more public destinations, such as restaurants and bars, are really how these concepts of the landscape and the terracing, outdoor seating, and eating areas were configured. As you see here, the intent is to create a great combination of both mature and diverse landscape through this gradual terracing that really invites the passerby from the Riverwalk and also brings them into the retail that you have in the base of these buildings. Overall, from the river, this is actually looking across from the historic district. The stepping of the building was also very much driven by not only the guidelines or the regulations, but also how we optimize, as I mentioned earlier, the view corridor of sky between these buildings, where previously it was just one continuous facade. Again, the activity, late hours, safety, really great destinations to meet, as seen here underneath the future location of the rain tree. Also, how it actually brings you through, the greeting from, in this case, Southwest 4th Avenue to the river. And along the river, there are going to be these places where you can actually stop and enjoy and grab a coffee or meet friends and actually just connect between the transition of the Riverwalk. There's also an intent to create feature walls, which we see here, which Ozzie is in discussions with artists, where we would also place an integrated art within the facade. And again, the terracing of transition between the right-of-way as well as the entry points into the retail. The facade of the building is deliberately textured in this staggered module to both, it actually works in a sustainable way because it's acting as a shading element to what is predominantly east-west faces of the tower, but it also enables you to create great privacy between the different residents within the experience of these terraces. As you can see, the views, obviously, and its connection within the users of the tower to the surrounding skyline. So overall, we're excited. We really believe this is not just a project in itself of just thinking of a project, but really contributing, as Ozzie mentioned earlier, to the community. This is, we're very proud to be part of this project, and we believe it certainly will add to Fort Lauderdale. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I wanted to just add a couple of quick things. One thing is that Lauderdale does go around. I just wanted to show this to you because obviously Lauderdale is something that, is very near and dear to a lot of us, and it was adopted by the master plan was adopted by the city commission. So what the Lauderdale shows you, this is obviously the streetscape design that you all have seen for Lauderdale, and what it shows you, this is a different project. This is the New River Yacht Club, but it connects with the hope that at some point the Riverwalk can go over the FEC right of way, but that is not up to us, that's up to FEC. But it shows that that Lauderdale actually comes back down behind New River Yacht Club and comes down to behind the marina and goes back up. So I'm just showing that to you for context. That's an important element of Lauderdale. That's what's proposed. More importantly is the Riverwalk, because this project sits on the Riverwalk, and the Riverwalk is so important. So I worked with Gina on this voluntary site plan condition that we would like to offer. I'm going to go ahead and read it because I think it's important. It says, developer downtown Fort Lauderdale Waterfront 18 LLC commits to building the Riverwalk along the New River adjacent to each parcel. There are 2 parcels in this proposal on the westernmost section of the project concurrent with the development of that parcel, and total time to completion is estimated to be 24 months from the receipt of the master building permit. These are the parcels identified in the Level 3 site plan submitted to PZ under case UDP S 2018. 2018. The Riverwalk shall be completed prior to or concurrent with the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the building adjacent to that portion of the Riverwalk. DFLW 18 also commits to constructing the easternmost section of the Riverwalk, so that's the piece that sits in front of the marina. On the marina parcel, the parcel that contains the existing working marina, which is not a part of this submission, to the greatest extent possible along the riverfront and through the marina parcel by the time of the issuance of certificacy for the planned marina upgrade. The marina is being upgraded, and we estimate, we intend to submit plans for the marina upgrade to the city of Fort Lauderdale by the second quarter of 2023, so that's coming pretty quickly, and estimate completion within 36 months from receipt of the master building permit. DFLW 18 further commits to work in good faith with the Riverwalk District, the Tarpon River Civic Association, and the FEC to attempt to create a connection over the FEC Railway to create that connection to the Riverwalk on the east side. So that's obviously very important. That's important to us. It's important to the project. It's important to the Riverwalk. So we're happy to offer that as a condition. We've also had some very lengthy discussions with the Esplanade. The Esplanade is obviously our closest neighbor. And this is just a list of things that were put in a letter that went to the Esplanade Condo Association. It mostly relates to construction and whatnot. I'm not going to read every one, but I am going to offer this. Obviously, it's part of my presentation, so it becomes part of the record this evening. So I'm happy to offer those as well. And that concludes our presentation. And did I make it? I was spot on. So as I said, the entire team is here. We're happy to answer any questions, and we thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Okay.
Ms. Toothaker, good evening. The last thing that you just presented with the condo to the west of you, did they acknowledge that? I saw that it was on Symbol Development's letterhead. Did they acknowledge and accept those conditions that are in there?
No. It's they've received them. They've acknowledged them and that they've received them, but it's not signed by both parties. It's signed by us.
To them dictating that this...
To them, yes.
Will they countersign saying, yes, that's what we asked?
I can't speak for them. I think they're here this evening.
Okay. I've got a couple other quick questions, and I don't know if they're to you or staff, so I'll just ask the question, whoever wants to weigh in. What happens to the existing underlying site plan? Is this a modification of that?
No, this is an entirely new site plan. This was too big of a change to travel as an amendment, so the existing site plan goes away upon the adoption of this site plan.
And the excess units that were originally a part of that
Go back in the pool.
go back in the
They go back in the pool. They go back in the rack pool. They're not flex units, they're rack units. So it's a distinction that doesn't mean a lot to a developer. It's a market rate unit, but they're rack units, not flex units.
How many units?
187.
Okay. I think that's it for right now. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have one question.
179.
Go ahead, Mr.
Sorry.
Bronco.
Sorry?
179 units.
Ms. Toothaker,
Yes.
could you talk to us about the water's edge? Because the developer had mentioned, as being a good steward for the industry. Could you tell me about the seawall and the opportunities for docking, if any? Just give me a little information.
So we right now the plan is, obviously the seawall, everything gets upgraded as part of this development because it's a development of the whole site, and that's what the ULDR requires. The idea is that there would be opportunities for potentially, obviously, there's a marina as part of the third site. That's a very important component. And I think it would be a mix of permanent and transient dockage. They're meant to be restaurant here and retail and whatnot. And so one of the conditions actually that was requested by the Marine Advisory Board is, as it relates to any, particularly transient dockage, that, boats would not impact the tree, which we've clearly agreed to and have addressed. But it's meant to have an active waterfront. It's a big part of what this project is meant to include.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, I would like to open this to the public. Is there anyone in the public that would wish to speak on this item? If you do, please stand up.
Chair, I think I'm going to save a little bit of time, at least as it relates to I'm going to have just a few of our people, I don't think we need to have every single one of the people here. I am going to ask you all, if you're supportive of the project, just stand up again for me really quickly. And so I'm not going to make you sit through all of that, but I did want you to know that if you feel the need to hear from everybody, certainly we will have everybody come up. We do have some folks that we've asked to speak, but let me know if you'd like everyone to stand and everyone to come up to the podium. I know they're happy to, but I don't know that that's necessary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, members of the public that would wish to speak on this item?
Can I just ask a question? Ms. Toothaker? I'm just wondering, of the people you've had stand up, how many of those people are on your team and how many are residents in the neighborhood or the...
You know what, Mary? I'll have them come up because
You don't have to do that. I just was curious as to, I couldn't tell. I see some team members here. So
Why don't we do this?
Yeah,
If you are a resident of the city of Fort Lauderdale and not part of the team and you support this project, please stand up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members of the public that would wish to speak on this item, please come up, stand over here. I'll ask you all, anyone that's coming up, has everyone been sworn in? I guess there's no no's, so, okay, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and where you live.
It's Kit Dennison of Dennison Yachting, and it won't take me 3 minutes because
Perfect.
I just wanted to share that our family's been on New River for a long, long time, and matter of fact, when the marine industry was first conceived and formed, there were four members: Lauderdale Yacht Basin, Broward Marine, Sun Power, that is right here, and then there was one other. But having the ability to keep a marine presence on New River is extremely important, I think, for the community. We know that the job multiple is something like 7 to 1 for every employee. But to continue to have that little boatyard there and service center is going to be a big improvement, or to keep it so that it's sustained is a very important part, in my opinion, that we continue to have that. So.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chairman Scott. My name is Bob Swindell. I live at 432 Charlie Avenue in Sailboat Bend. I first met Aussie Symbol about 10 years ago. I hosted a meeting of the marine industry folks and the train people to talk about the crossing and the idea of a new high-speed rail. And had never met Aussie before, and he insisted that train made a louder horn noise when it passed his property at the river than it did in other places along the tracks. And the train people promised that that wasn't the case. It may have just sounded that way. But I talked to Aussie after the meeting and then talked to him during the process of his first site plan approval. I think he's the kind of developer that we've asked for, that listens to the community, listens to the city. I grew up here, and I remember when Chinook Marine was on the river and Norseman was on the river, and we had these boatyards working on the river, and it was part of our downtown. And as we've grown up and matured, that's changed. But I think when you look at this building and the design and the thoughtfulness that's gone into creating something the city can be proud of, it is, in my opinion, a world-class design. And, you know, part of my day job is to attract people to relocate their businesses to Broward County. And having residential inventory is going to be critically important to us as we have these companies coming into downtown. Again, I'd say, you know, from what I've read and watched, he's listened to key stakeholders like the marine industry folks. He wants to maintain a working marina on the river. For downtown residents in the Venice of America, this is the only place they would be able to store their boats if they're living in one of the downtown condominiums. So I think it's important that we keep that as well. And again, I think he has done the best job possible to craft something that matches the Venice of America. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me ask the next speaker. Can you do this in 2 minutes instead of 3?
Probably.
Okay, you're the good guy. Go. Please state your name.
Good evening. My name is Steve Gaddy. I own 2 properties on 2 of the townhouses on Southwest 5th Avenue. I'm here representing 8 other townhouse owners right on the street there. We're arguably, besides the Esplanade, probably most impacted by this project. We've obviously had a lot of concerns because it's going to change the character of our neighborhood. So far we've been very impressed with how much they've cared about our concerns. We've brought up mostly about traffic and parking, and we think that they've done an outstanding job of you know, making sure that our concerns are addressed. The only other concern that we really have is we want speed bumps on that street, and Aussie has actually agreed to support us with getting those, but it's 100% up to the city. So I have a letter here. It's with all the other property owners that are supporting this. I can give that to you guys if you want to see it, but it's got everybody's names on it who supports this project.
Thank you very much. And you know, as far as the speed humps, it has nothing to do with this. You have to go to the city, and it's a different process.
Yes, I understand.
Super. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. My name is Johnny Calabrese. I'm a resident of Fort Lauderdale. Moved down here 12 years ago from New York. Married my ex-wife that was born and raised down here. And in 2009, I saw the status of Riverwalk, and it was pretty clear to me as a resident of New York that the thing that was lacking in the downtown corridor of Fort Lauderdale was residential rental units for young professionals to move into the downtown area. Riverwalk was an absolute disaster at that time. It was a ghost town. I couldn't believe what my ex used to tell me about partying there and having fun and how vibrant it was. But the bottom line is that the project has not, I saw it 12 years ago when I found out, or 10 years ago, I found out about this project and did my due diligence on it. I was very much impressed with the design and the passion of the developer, and I hadn't even met Aussie then. I came here and I spoke at this same podium 10 years ago at 1 o'clock in the morning, championing the project and how much it was necessary for downtown. I thought the design was excellent, and I thought there was a real need that this project would fulfill and really try to revitalize downtown Fort Lauderdale. It's disheartening to see that after 10 years, this project has not moved forward when there has been an incredible amount of development in downtown, many of which of the buildings leave a lot to be desired from a design perspective. The colossal, monolith at the end of Las Olas that basically blots out the sun is a testament to overdevelopment, in my opinion. And I think design plus need is an essential part of development in downtown Fort Lauderdale. I think this project satisfies both. One thing I'll just say about Aussie's character, I've gotten to know Aussie over the last 10 years. I've gotten to know his family and his background. The guy is an unbelievable, passionate developer that really sets himself apart from most developers in this town. And all I'd like to say is that if he was interested in a quick buck, this guy would be gone a long time ago. And everything regarding the tree, which I understand from the residents, desire to keep it more green downtown, it's important. He's done everything and bent over backwards to make that tree viable for the people and residents of the area. So I just want to say, as a resident, I believe wholeheartedly in this project, but moreover, I believe in Aussie Symbol. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, have you been sworn in?
Yes.
Hold on a second here. Okay, please state your name. Can you do this in 2 minutes?
Maybe even less.
Okay, good. I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes as long as you guys agree. Go.
My name's Mark Mentz. I'm a resident of Fort Lauderdale, a Tarpon River resident as well. More importantly, I live in the Esplanade. Actually, I live 3 floors below the apartment Ossie used to rent. Before moving to Fort Lauderdale, I lived in 12 major cities across the U.S., East Coast to West Coast, one of those being San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio, Texas has one of the most beautiful river walks in the country, maybe even in the world. We hope that Fort Lauderdale will actually mirror that river walk ultimately someday. One of our big concerns, and actually I'll even take a step back, and I still got plenty of time. I'd like to thank the developer for a lot of the accommodations that have been made, the parking issues, the street access not being off 4th Avenue, because that's going to impact us greatly. But the one thing that we do see is very important is getting that river walk completed. The statement that was up here is the first I've seen of that this evening. That was one of our requests that we were going to make this evening. I'll still make that request and even make a more detailed one that we'd like to see both properties that are being developed on the west side have that river walk completed at the same time early on because of all the construction that's going to be going on in that area, including the River Lofts project. That's not really Ossie's project, but it's going to become a mess. And trying to walk through that area like a number of us do, it would be fantastic to have the Riverwalk completed from 4th Avenue to 3rd Avenue so we could avoid some of that. And I do think that could be possible. It was done when New River Yacht Club was built. There was already a Riverwalk in place. So we'd like to see that. We'd like to see the completion across the marina, and we'll do everything we can to help do that. We have a number of people that might actually be able to help do that up in different markets of the country here that might help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next, can you speak for 2 minutes?
Sure I can, Jackie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm speaking in support of the item this evening.
Your name, please?
My name is John Cotter, and I live at 432 Charlie Avenue in Sailboat Bend. I'm a board member of the Sailboat Bend Civic Association, but I'm speaking tonight on behalf of myself as a private citizen. Just wanted to make a couple of points. I lived in Fort Lauderdale for 30 years. About 2 years ago, my partner and I moved to Sailboat Bend. We love walking our dogs on both sides of the Riverwalk, the north side, the south side. We'd love to see the south side of the Riverwalk become more activated. And I think Ossie's comments this evening make it apparent that he doesn't just care about this community and the Marine Association. He's passionate about this community and the Marine Association. I'd be proud to have him as a neighbor, and we look forward to the approval of the item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next, have you been sworn in?
No, I have not.
Okay. Is there anybody else in line that has not been sworn in? Okay. City Attorney?
Yes, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Please state your name. Will 2 minutes be enough?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Todd Weaver. I am a born and bred Fort Lauderdale native. Have lived in Fort Lauderdale after college since 1996. Grew up in Plantation. So I've been here for quite a long while. Was a competitive swimmer at the Swimming Hall of Fame under Jack Nelson. So been here, seen it all. I'm here because I was here 10 years ago, like one of the gentlemen earlier said, and from 10 years ago to today and seeing the model that is being brought out here today, it just only gets better. And speaking of all the things that everybody wants in this era that we live in, which is whether it's the Riverwalk and activity and safety, Ossie's done everything he can, from what I can see, from the original plan 10 years ago to even make it better. The design's better, the walkway's better. And I just think it's going to be the catalyst for kicking off other developments down the line that are going to try to hopefully model his model and make it as passionate as he is about these his project. And so I would ask you to support it. I think it's time, and he should be the gateway to the way other developers go about doing development on the south side in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker. Is 2 minutes enough for you, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My name's John Klarsfeld. I have been sworn in.
First off, I should mention that I have no financial or other connection to this property or any of the principals here, except that I live in Broward County, and I'm a taxpayer and I'm a voter. But in this case, I should also mention that I am a fan of architecture. I think that when these are developments are popping up, you know, some of them people like and some of them people don't like. Some are designed in a way that you sort of shake your head because it doesn't make sense. But this makes sense. You know, this isn't a design that's going to be causing problems to our city. This design is impeccable. It's just important that this project also bridges the gap between two neighborhoods. It's a symbol of development and modernizing the city. It's equitable and its usage fills a void, which is needed in this city. Of course, you can't meet everybody's expectations. Apparently, there's some question about a tree. But a project of this level and this amount of design must be looked at in a very favorable light. I came here today in person because this project appears to be a benefit and an asset to the city. So I'm here only because I love the city that I live and work in, and that I want to see it get better. And I think that this project represents making the city better. So I ask you please to approve the applicant's plans today. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Okay, next. I'm going to give you 2 minutes if that's okay.
I'll need 20 seconds. I wasn't prepared to make a speech. I was actually coming to ask questions. My name's Lisa Corcoran. I moved here from LA.
Talk in the microphone.
Hi, I'm Lisa Corcoran. I live in the Esplanade. I moved to Fort Lauderdale 2 years ago from Los Angeles. And one of the reasons I bought the condo that I live in is because of the charm of the Riverwalk. And when I found out that there was a development going in adjacent to the property, and that the initial plan included 3 parcels, and on the 3rd parcel, which is the marina parcel, there would be an extension of the Riverwalk, which would actually complete it, so that you could walk along the south border or the south side of the river and make a complete loop around the area of the Riverwalk on the north side. I was very excited. And then to find out that the plan changed to 2 parcels and the 3rd parcel was dropped and there was no requirement to add the Riverwalk at the 3rd parcel, I was very disappointed. Tonight, I've heard that if there's a possibility and a potential time frame for that to happen, which would be fabulous. Because I think that for the neighbors, that's the most concerning thing to us, is that we see everyone walking along on the north side, and it's wide and it's used all the time, but it's choppy on the south side. And leaving that last parcel, excuse me, undone, with no plan for it to be continued at some point in the future, to me is a defeat of all of the things the mayor is trying to do, the developers are trying to do, and the residents would like. And I feel like the developer would get a lot of mileage out of saying, hey, I've just completed the Riverwalk. I'm the last guy. Here it is. So I just wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to say is that when the building next door, which is a city building, was being built, we had a lot of subcontractors coming through, blasting their stereos at 6 in the morning. So we're hoping that doesn't happen. And finally, what I wanted to say is a lot of dust was kicked up from the 2 buildings across the river. I think it's called the Society Building. And I'm hoping that you guys will take some steps to prevent that from happening, because our entire building on one side is just covered with dust, and it's very hard to get it off the building. I know that seems punitive to you, but it's quality of life to us. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. Stephanie, do you have this lady's number? Can you communicate with her on that?
I think I have your number. I gave it to everybody. Yeah. You can reach out to me. Okay, perfect.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, next. Please state your name.
My name is Susan Steinberg. I live in the Esplanade.
You gotta bring the microphone down so we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Susan Steinberg. I live in the Esplanade. Been involved in listening to the project for about 2 years, understanding everything that has evolved. So I want to say, Ozzy, you have a lot of friends. Feels like I want to be your friend, because you've got a big support system. But I think just most important to say, there's a lot of noise around what the building, what it was supposed to be, what it is now. That's all. It is what it is. I am in full support of the building and getting modernized on our side of the river. I just want to be able to have the moment to say how important it is.
that we complete the riverfront. We are on that south side for businesses, for residents, to have everything done and then not be able to enjoy the Riverwalk as everyone else does on the other side just feels like a missed opportunity. So I'm not really sure the language of the last addendum. I'm just, I just don't know what it means. It sounds like it's in the right direction, but to just really consider it for everybody on our side of the river, how important it is. That's it.
Thank you. Stephanie, you guys committed to doing that. I heard you. Am I correct? Okay. Let's see. Yes, sir. Go ahead. State your name, please.
My name is David Harris. I am here as a private resident. I live in the Esplanade, although I am also on the board. I'm actually the board president of the Esplanade. I am not specifically here representing the board. The board has taken no vote on this and has not opted to support or oppose the project. However, I did want to come and say that we have been, a number of residents and myself and another board member have been in conversations with the developer and their team for quite a while. That has led to a number of concessions, accommodations, most of which Stephanie had already reviewed during her presentation, and we appreciate all of those changes. In addition, today I received the letter that Stephanie alluded to earlier regarding memorializing some of those. We are still discussing other things that may come up, and I'm sure that other things will come up during construction. And we've been working, and they've been working in good faith to move the ball forward and to make sure any issues are resolved. I have a copy of the signed letter if you want it for the records. I think it's also in Stephanie's presentation, but if I've got a copy here if you'd like one for the record.
You're welcome to give it to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Okay, next.
Hello, my name is Michael Perry. I am a Fort Lauderdale resident as well. I just wanted to come up here real quick and give my support as a younger resident. I'm a law student and plan on continuing to work here in Fort Lauderdale for years to come. It's exciting to see a project that will bring about a residence that will enhance the community and continue for years to come. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next.
Hello, good evening. My name's Emily Abasor. I'm a resident of Fort Lauderdale for 15 years. I live downtown. I'm also a local business owner, and I was here 10 years ago also showing my support for this project. What I love the most is the genuine thoughtfulness that has gone into every detail, talking to the residents and the people and seeing the vision in the city, like living in Fort Lauderdale for 15 years and seeing Miami, like people are like, but Aussie being someone who lives in Miami, to see the potential in Fort Lauderdale and be so committed to it through all this ups and downs over the years, I think that says a lot about what's behind this project. I know I live, like I said, downtown. I'm in the Novo building, and I walk my dog along Riverwalk every single day, and I rarely ever cross to the other side because there's like nothing over there. I think I speak on behalf of a lot of people in the area and my demographic, like that we want more. There's nothing like this with the architecture, with the design, the restaurants, everything like that. I mean, like, this is what Fort Lauderdale needs, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Carly Shekels. I'm part of the management team at Riverfront Marina, which is adjacent to the project. We are in full support. We're very excited for the Raintree Riverwalk residences. Being where we are, we're an operating marina. We're one of the, I think, last on that waterfront for for boats, for personal boaters. We would love to see the Riverwalk extended, but we'd like to see it tie into the current Lauder Trail. So it goes around our facility as opposed to through it, which would completely impede our business. but we'd love to see this come to life. So we have full support of the project, and we would really like to see them tie into the Lauder Trail and go around us and complete the Riverwalk.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to talk who is here tonight? Okay. Since there's no other speakers, I'm going to close the public hearing. Ms. Toothaker, would you like to do a 2-minute wrap-up?
Thank you, Chair. I want to make it clear to the members of Esplanade, the residents of Esplanade, excuse me, that talked about the Riverwalk. This project does include a commitment to build the Riverwalk on all 3 parcels. The only thing, the reason that paragraph is long is because the first 2 sites are going to be construction sites. So it's got to come, but we put a condition in there that you can't receive a CO for the building unless and until the Riverwalk is built that's adjacent to it. So I worked very hard on that timing with Gina from the Riverwalk Trust, and we are committed to it. We're also committed. We had some discussions about whether it was appropriate for the Riverwalk to go through a working marina, and we got past that. We're going to make that work. We think that's important too. The Riverwalk is a benefit to this project. We believe in it. We will, ensure we've got. I failed to mention. I apologize. Paul Weinberg, with Keith, was actually one of the people that designed the Riverwalk in its infancy, and so he's a part of this team as well, and has worked on the design of the Riverwalk to make sure that it complies with the design guidelines as well. So we are absolutely committed to that and excited to complete the Riverwalk.
So great. Thank you very much. Okay, let's bring this back to the board. Do any of the board members have any comments or questions, or should we, let me just say this. Does the board wish to make the staff report
Yes.
part of the record? Are you making that motion?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, Mary, did you have a question or want to make a
Yeah,
comment?
I just wanted to ask Ms. Toothaker a quick question about parking. I noticed you've made a number of accommodations on the parking. Is there any more room to do that? Driving back in that neighborhood today and looking at everything, all of the activity that's going to be going on around it, I'm just wondering if there's any flexibility. Or I guess another way of asking that would be, will any of the parking in your building be available for, you'll probably have guest parking, but would any parking be available for people in the area that are using River?
Well, there's a significant amount of restaurant and retail. We have parking for that inside the building as well. So it's not just the residential piece. The entire project accommodates parking. There's an entire ground floor of parking that's available for folks that are coming to, whether it's a cafe or and the marina, obviously is onto itself, that there's already an existing lot there now until that marina gets upgraded. But yes, there's plenty of additional parking in addition to the residential parking.
Thank you.
Mike, Mr. Weymouth?
Mr. Symbol, how are you, sir? Oh, what 24 hours you can get done. Congratulations. And I mean that sincerely. He and I spoke yesterday, and I expressed to him my concern, like many others, for the Riverwalk, and within 24 hours, you and your team have addressed that. So thank you for putting on the handcuffs yourself. I'd just like to tighten them up just a little bit, if that's okay. You've put some timelines into completing the project that's before us tonight, and then you've also put some timelines into when you're going to be making application and completing the portion next door. My concern is the portion next door may not actually start, which would mean that the contiguous portion of the Riverwalk would not be completed. The only thing I ask is, in the event that when you are finishing up the site before us tonight, if the adjacent marina piece is not in permitting, having the permit issued, that you would maybe commit to completing the Riverwalk in conjunction with this piece, so that the Riverwalk could be completed once and for all.
I can address that, and I think Ossie can address it as well. We already have plans for the marina that we hope to, if we're lucky enough to obtain your approval this evening, and after the call-up period, obviously, and during that, I wanted to mention also during that period, we'll also continue to work with Esplanade to get that wrapped up and make sure that they're satisfied as well. But we already have plans for that are getting ready to actually be submitted after we get through this process. But we can commit it clearly says, obviously, that we have to do it as part of phase 3, but I think it's no problem to commit that it will be done regardless of phase 3.
So it'd be completed in conjunction with the first portion of the river.
That we can't do, not at the same time, because remember, when you start construction, it's just a timing issue. It would be done, well, I'm sorry, it could, if there's no future phase, then we could, yes, then I believe we could commit, if there's no future phase. If there's a future phase, then that would have to be done in conjunction, because remember, it's a construction site. Just like, that's why we timed it the way it did. But yes, if there's no future upgrade to the marina, then yes, we could commit to doing it as
Coupled
part
to this at the end of the development.
Yes, that's not gonna happen, so it's an easy thing for me to commit to.
Glad to hear that. Ossie, thank you, seriously. I know you did a lot of hard work on that, and I was one of those people who was here 10 years ago, too.
You were.
Not up here, though. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Cohen?
Thank you. Is this mic on? There we go. I actually was up here 10 years ago, and obviously I took a little break in between. But it's more of a comment that I wanted to make to the board. 10 years ago when we were here and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, there was a long line of people talking about the tree, talking about Ossie saying that he's not going to build this project. He's not a builder. He's just going to get the permission to move the tree. And this isn't a guy from this neighborhood. It was a crazy meeting and a very long meeting. That being said, seeing him here 10 years later, making the same adjustments, and I liked the building back then, and I voted yes for the building back then, and I voted yes to move the tree back then. This building still has the same feel of that building, and I think he made better adjustments to the building. I think it actually looks better, and I also think that it fits more in today's character with Fort Lauderdale, because you don't see a lot of innovative building going on in Fort Lauderdale, and I think we've talked about this on the board before, that we wanted to see more innovative building, and I think he's done that. And I also think the accommodations that he makes are over the top. I think that more than any other builder that has been before us, he has gone the distance. Like someone that holds onto a project for 10 years, keeps refining it, keeps making it better, and then comes back in front of us 10 years later. That's probably never going to happen again. I hope that it would, but I don't think it ever will. That someone who could have flipped a property probably 100 times over since he got those permissions from 10 years ago. That was a bigger building and it had more units available. I think speaks miles for the developer. So I just want to say I think that we're never going to see that again. That type of builder come before us. And I'm impressed by the plans that are before us. And I urge the board to really take a look at this through the lens that I looked at it 10 years ago, and also knowing that he stuck around for 10 years. This isn't a guy that came in, built, wants to leave. This is a guy that's really committed to Fort Lauderdale. Thank you.
Did you want to make a motion, Mr. Cohen?
I would make a motion, but it looks like he wants to say something first.
Yeah.
But then I'll make my motion.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have some questions I'd like to go through, and just before I forget, I mean, while we're on the topic of the Riverwalk and completing it, I mean, Ossie, if you do plan on moving your office into whatever is built on the site, I think you'll probably feel it pretty quickly that you'll want, if you don't already, to be able to have the Riverwalk completed and to be able to go downtown. And I'm sure that you want to complete the Riverwalk, and I'm sure in hearing it tonight and you know, the eyes of the city, the eyes of everyone here are on you, you know, to do your part at least, hopefully in our lifetime, to complete this Riverwalk. So, you know, I mean, I think the language that we got tonight is probably the best that we as the Planning and Zoning Board, in my opinion, are able to do, considering we're only able to review the site plan that is in front of us, which doesn't include the marina site. So, you know, we can't impose like an actual, you have to build this condition on a site that is not part of the application that's in front of us. So it's, in that sense, you know, appreciate that you're willing to put on the record, you know, what your commitment is, you know, for the Riverwalk, and we, trust that you will do what you're saying. Now, some questions. There was some discussion throughout this process. I understand with the neighborhood and with the city of potentially donating the land underneath the rain tree to either the city or the Riverwalk organization. I don't know, where that ended up. If somebody could just give me an update on where that ended up, I'd appreciate an update.
I think we're happy that, yes, we have had discussions about donating the land surrounding the rain tree. As you know, there's an obligation on the developer to maintain the tree for a certain period of time. There's security that was posted. It's far more complicated than us just saying, yes, we'll give the land under the tree. We would like to give the land under the tree and give everything to the city along with all the liability that goes with it. I think we are open to that. It requires discussion with the city manager's office and whatnot. So it's something that we have been asked. We have said, yes, we're certainly open to doing that. It's frankly probably better for everybody if that becomes city-owned land or even to the Riverwalk. But there's some other, because of the obligations on the developer to maintain the tree, there's some things that would need to be papered. So let me, if you would allow me to leave it as this, we will commit to working with the city and the Riverwalk to see if that is viable, if they would accept it. And if that is the case, and we can define an area that makes sense for the tree and for the Riverwalk, then yes, we are absolutely willing to do that.
Okay, thank you. Another question I had was just regarding Southwest Fifth Avenue. That is, for everyone's edification, the road directly west of the Esplanade. That is the portion of the Tarpon River neighborhood, which the residential, single-family duplex part of the neighborhood, which will be most adversely impacted by the traffic as a result of this project. Any vehicles heading southbound onto 4th Avenue won't be required to, but many of which will be likely to go down that pathway. And today there are children playing there on the street. It's a very quiet area. Assuming the city is amenable to you, paying for it, would you be willing to pay for the cost of 2 speed humps on that street if the city is willing to work with you?
I think we've already, if I didn't commit to it here, we'd had that discussion with the neighbors because the neighbors have asked us, and the answer is yes, that's to our benefit as well. Yes, we'd be willing to pay for the speed humps if the city will allow speed humps.
Okay. So it'd be helpful to know, before there's any sort of vote, what staff, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a whole speed hump procedure that the city has. There's a safety issues. That's a little, there's several departments that have to review that. So we can look at it and review it, but I don't want to say for sure there's a process that you have to go through. The neighborhood has to request it, et cetera. So, I don't want to read the entire policy because it'll take a while, but
yeah,
I'm happy to just offer that the developer would be willing to pay for 2 speed humps along that right of way if it's approved by the city of Fort Lauderdale.
Okay. That would go a long way in mitigating some of the adverse traffic impact.
Yes.
And then I saw that in the statement you made with the Riverwalk that you were willing to commit to working with everybody to complete the Riverwalk, not just the portion in front of the building, but to do what it takes to try to even work with FEC. I mean, even beyond this project, and work with everybody to do what it takes to put the pressure on FEC to work with us.
Yes.
So just, I want to just ask you here on the record for this meeting, are you willing to work with the neighborhood, city, Riverwalk, and FEC to complete the Riverwalk in its entirety?
Yes.
Okay. And then will you agree here on the record that you will work directly with the Esplanade condo to minimize impacts to their building?
Yes, and we've already done that, and the letter, as Mr. Harris said, it's not signed, but we will continue to work with them post this evening's hearing, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Those were my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Can I ask another quick question, Madam Chair?
you may.
Ms. Toothaker, real quick, I meant to ask it earlier and I forgot to. How do you foresee activating the waterfront of this project? In other words, are there going to be docks, piers, transient docking, permanent
Yes.
docking?
Yes.
Yes to all
Yes
of
to
the
all
above?
of that, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a follow-up question on that.
Sure, Mr. Bronco.
You said permanent docking. Earlier, you said transient docking. Could you tell me what permanent docking?
Combination of permanent, well, transient docking means somebody is out on their boat and decides to stop and come
Right.
walk into the restaurant.
Right.
Permanent dockage means it could be somebody that lives in the buildings that rents a permanent dock space. So it's proposed to be a combination of those things.
So there's going to be shore power. Is there going to be pump outs on the docks? What exactly will be out
So the
there?
dock plan is not part of the site plan. That goes through, as you know, we have an environmental consultant that's taking the dockage plan through the entire process, and it has to go to Marine Advisory Board. It's got to go through the whole process.
And is that going to be a floating dock, a fixed dock? How are they doing
I
that?
don't know if we know the answer. It's fixed. It's fixed. So Aussie said it's fixed.
Okay. Do you have a percentage? Do you know the percentage of how much is going to be permanent versus transient?
I don't think so.
That's
I mean, it's
something
not
we could
part of
commit to
tonight's
tonight.
plan.
Our intention is for most of it to be transient.
To be what?
Most of it to be transient.
So open to the public, so somebody could come up and enjoy the day on a boat.
The idea here is to really create a nautical center in Fort Lauderdale. And so transient is our direction.
And the reason I'm asking is there are portions of the Riverwalk that are owned by the city, and they kind of manage it, and you have liveaboards, and to me, it's not the most desirable
No,
place
we
to
don't want
walk by.
I agree. We don't want that.
And they have the pump
We
outs.
can agree to
in the
no
back.
living boards.
Yeah. And it is nice when you can pull up. So back in the day at the Riverfront Mall, you could pull up there. They had somebody working with you, help you dock over in front of, well, just down the river. They also had that where I could pull up my boat, and they had a dock master there. So it'd be nice if we had that, because that really activates that edge too. During Jazz Fest and all that, it'd be amazing to dock up.
We agree.
Yeah.
Permanent dockage is not appealing to people that are walking. So yeah, that'd be great. Transient.
There's a real lack of, as many of us are boaters, there's a real lack of places you can go on your boat and dock and go eat. And so that's, as Ossie said, it's the concept behind the Live Work Marina District.
Okay, is there any other questions, or can we move along here? Board?
I'd like to make a
Thank you,
motion to approve.
Stephanie. Okay. Brad, did you want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Would that approval
Yes.
include all staff conditions?
Yes.
Would that approval include all the conditions proffered by the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Is that satisfactory, Shari, without naming each one?
I think you should state in detail what those conditions are that you're accepting, just to make sure the clerk has it for the record. So we know that there are all the staff conditions in the staff report, but there were about 5 conditions, I recall, being mentioned on the record.
Can we make the 5 conditions that were mentioned on the record? Because we can make the letter part of the record.
Yes, thank you. Otherwise, it would be another hour.
The difficulty with the letter is that staff does not have a copy of that letter.
They
Dwayne
do,
and I have
actually.
not reviewed it.
I've got one right here, Shari.
Mr. Harris submitted it.
The Espelon letter,
Yes.
we don't know whether or not it's an exaction or not. We haven't had a chance to really look at that, so.
So
Well-
can we just attach it with the understanding that what you're able, as long as it can be done, they've agreed to do it?
As long as it's in accordance with the requirements in our code and it's not an exaction. So
We're
always-
we're happy to make those voluntary,
And
as well as the Riverwalk condition.
The problem is the exaction statute doesn't allow you to waive it, but as long as it's deemed feasible by the city and will not result in an exaction. Any other stuff? Got it? D?
Subject to approval.
Subject to approval by the city, city
It'd always
attorney's
be
office.
subject. Right. But it would always be subject to approval by the city, right?
City attorney's office.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great.
And the 2 that Jay mentioned about donating the property under the rain tree and also if that could be acceptable to the
I
city
think
manager?
that
That's in
Stephanie
there?
said that she'd make every effort to make that happen. I mean, they want that to happen, correct?
Yes.
So the applicant is under the impression that they're going to make every good faith effort to make that happen, to
Yes.
donate the property to the Riverwalk Trust
Yeah, and the two, and then
or the city?
Yes.
Yeah, so the conditions I'd recommend are the one we just referred to with Esplanade, the one that was sent to the board regarding the Riverwalk, the agreement that they'd come to with Riverwalk, that was posted on the screen of the presentation. In addition, the developer will continue to explore the possibility of dedicating the land around the rain tree to the Riverwalk organization or the city. If feasible and the city is willing to agree, the developer will pay for the cost of 2 speed humps on Southwest Fifth Avenue. And then the developer will continue to work with the neighborhood, city, Riverwalk, and FEC to do their part to complete the Riverwalk. And the developer will work with the Esplanade Condominium Association to minimize impacts to their building.
Yes,
I'll
that's all
accept-
5. Good job.
Yes.
Do you adopt
Plus-
that as part of your motion?
Yeah, I'll amend the motion to include everything that Jay said, plus whatever's on
Staff, plus staff
staff.
conditions in
There
the
you go.
report.
Jay, you did great.
And do you agree with the findings of fact
I do.
in the staff report? Okay. And is there a second to that long motion?
I'll second it.
Mary seconded? Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Let me go ahead and read the resolution and then we'll vote. Planning and Zoning Board Resolution, the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a site plan level 3 development permit and a parking reduction for the property abutting the New River located at 408 Southwest 4th Avenue, Fort Lauderdale, in the Downtown Regional Activity Center, Southwest Mixed Use Zoning District for the development of 677 residential units and 21,000 square feet of commercial use, case number UDP-S20018. Please call the roll.
Brad Cohen,
Yes.
Jay Scheckman,
Yes.
John Baranco,
Yes.
Mary Fertig, Michael Weymouth,
Yes.
Sharon McCartney,
Yes.
Steve Gannon,
Yes.
William Rotella,
Yes.
Jacqueline Scott.
Yes.
Thank you all
Congratulations.
very much.
Ossie, did you get all these supporters from spring break or something? You having a rave after this?
Am I?
Okay. Okay, we're going to keep going. If you guys could,
Move it outside, folks.
yeah, we want to keep going with the meeting. If you guys could keep it down and let us continue. Next on the agenda. Can you guys celebrate outside?
If they don't hurry up, I'm going to overturn the motion.
I know.
Motion to reconsider.
Got my own rave to go to.
Robert's like, what's going on?
Giddy up.
Lockery, you got a lot to follow.
Okay.
I'm gonna have all our supporters stand up.
Okay, let's continue with case number UDP-S21045. Let's see.
You ready?
Disclosures.
Yeah, okay. Do we have disclosures from the board?
Mike Weymouth, I spoke to the applicant's counsel.
Bill Rotella, I spoke with applicant's counsel.
Jay Scheckman spoke with applicant's counsel.
Brad Cohen, I had a message from applicant's counsel, but I didn't have an opportunity to call him back.
Mary?
Microphone on, but I spoke with the applicant's counsel and visited the site.
John Bronco, I spoke to Robert Lockery.
Sherry McCartney, I spoke to applicant's counsel as well.
Bill?
I already said that I spoke with him. Thank you.
I'm sorry. And I spoke with the applicant's counsel. Mr. Lockery, how much time do you need?
About 10 minutes.
Very
I'll-
good.
I'll be
Appreciate
quicker
that.
than that. I'll move quickly and can answer any questions as they come up.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Robert Locker on behalf of the applicant. I'm joined here tonight by members of our team, including our architects, traffic engineers, as well as the development team and ownership. This project is located in the city's Uptown zoning district. It's a zoning district that was created at the request of business owners like Citrix, is before you tonight. It's a process that took several years for the city to get the residential density and the rules in place to allow residential uses up in this essentially business corridor that was developed in the 1980s. This specific parcel is located on the Citrix campus, which is to the, essentially between Powerline on the west. I was trying to get the little hand, but I can't get it. Hopefully you can see this marker. Powerline is the ribbon that's running north-south to the west of the site. The site is outlined in yellow. Cypress Creek is on the south of the site, going east to west, and then Andrews Avenue over to the right, which of course is to the east, and then I-95 to the east of that. The site, as I said, is part of a larger business park, but even as a subset of that, you have the two Citrix buildings that are located outside of this site plan, but directly adjacent to the west. They share a common driveway, which will come in play with the site plan, as well as those two office buildings have their parking garage in the rear. Over on our site, which is the request before you tonight, there's an existing office building at the southeast corner of the site, which is at the bottom right, and then a large surface parking lot with an office building at the northeast corner. This project that's before you tonight is for a mixed-use project consistent with the urban village requirements for residential use. So this is the overall site plan that includes both the existing building at the southeast corner, office building, which will remain, and then the residential portion of the project, which includes a central garage. It's a wrap product, a 7-story wrap product, which means there's a central garage that is essentially lined or wrapped by residential units on the public access city streets, which are to the north and to the east, and also as it would be seen from the south, which is from Cypress Creek. So we're keeping the existing office building, getting rid of the surface parking lot and one of the office buildings that's on the site, and replacing it with this mixed-use building. One of the items or the reasons that the project is before you tonight is because we are asking for a waiver for setbacks. Specifically, this code requirement in this section requires that buildings be located approximately 5 to 10 feet from the property line, and that's to create an urban feel to the site. Given this site's location, though, within an existing business park that has its own regulations that require bigger setbacks, and also to be compliant with the feel of that neighborhood, essentially, the business park neighborhood, the developer has elected to provide for larger setbacks, where typically the setback, as I said, is required to be 5 to 10 feet. In this case, the setbacks on the north are anywhere from 20 to 30 feet. Most of the north side actually has a 30-foot setback. And then along the east, which is adjacent to 6th on the east side of the property, again, the setback varies from almost 40 feet down to about 10 and 15 and 20, but in all cases exceeding what the code would otherwise require. This is a view of the building which meets all your height requirements. This Planning and Zoning Board could grant approval for a building up to 150 feet. We're not asking for any additional height with this. What we are asking is that within the build to right height, we're asking for 7 stories, although we're not exceeding, in fact, we're under the 70 feet, we're at 69 feet. So we're not asking for any additional height, just an additional floor within that floor plate. At this point, you're looking to the northeast. You see the primary corner of the site, which is located at the southeast. And then one of the things you'll notice about the building is it does bend and curve with a lot of articulation along each one of the street frontages. This is a view looking from the other direction, actually from the north side of the site, looking to the southwest. This is the northeast portion of the building. And again, around the other side of the building, this is from the northwest corner of the site, looking to the southeast. So in all cases, the garage itself is not visible from any of the public streets. As we went through this process and were designing the project, I will say that staff challenged us a number of times and asked for some additional elements to the building, which we'll talk about. But they all relate mainly to the setback requirements and then to the building design. As I said, we've set the building back further than you would ordinarily provide. In fact, the actual site itself is 43% open space, or rather 43% of the site that is not occupied by a building. So there is a lot of green area around the site, which we've incorporated with large shade trees, planting areas between the streetscape and the sidewalk, and then additional a frontage zone with additional landscaping between the sidewalk and the building itself. It's kind of hard to read here, but if you can see those little red dash lines on the left of the property line, you'll see that's where the building would be located, and we've simply pushed the building back further. But that was not the original project as it was submitted. Although it had these setbacks, the site plan that's in front of you now is actually the original plan, which will look close to that site plan as it's now there. But there were very important improvements made at the request of staff. And really one of the things staff wanted to do is they asked us, now that you've set the building back, that's one thing, but let's make sure that building interacts with the street and with the sidewalk. So with the original design, you'll see that around the perimeter of the site, it's just green area. And among the improvements that were made are direct connections from the building itself to the sidewalk area that also have little landing pad areas and seating areas around the perimeter of the site, which I'll show you quickly, which provide additional access. Along the north side of the site, for example, where previously all access to the site was only from 2 locations for pedestrians, there are 6 of these 7 units on the north side now have direct connection to the sidewalk. Similarly, on the east side, there's direct connection from the units which face the street up at the northeastern side of the project. We've incorporated a plaza that circulates around from that east side all the way around underneath, or rather to the south of the building, connecting not only to the office building to the south, but also to the 2 Citrix office buildings to the west. And those units that are facing south to that plaza now have direct walk-up access to that plaza area. Here's a blow-up of some of the improvements that will be made in that plaza area. In addition to additional seating, planning, and landscaping areas, there will be additional materials included, including artwork. This is a view of that plaza area from the street view. As you look towards the building, you can see just to the left that invitation into the plaza area, and this shows an overview of it, connecting again the residential building with the office building that's to the south, and the office buildings, which in this view would be to the left. That plaza is a very large plaza. I want to point that out. It's about 50 feet wide. To put that in perspective, that's the width of Andrews Avenue right behind me from curb to curb. We don't have any cars within that area. Rather, we have seating areas, we have gathering areas, and we have large sidewalks. So full 50 feet of plaza connecting the buildings. In addition to that portion of the plaza, other elements have been added to, again, enhance the connection between the sidewalk and the building with seating areas, with additional planters. They extend along the northern, along the eastern, and even along the far southern edge of the property along Cypress Creek. In addition to those improvements to the site, staff also challenged us to add additional elements to the architecture. This was the original building as it was designed, very clean, handsome. But through this process, we added additional quality materials to the building, including stone cladding, wood veneer, and additional detailing that gives the project a very self-confident design, and we believe really adds to the overall appearance of the building. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, is there any questions from the board for the applicant? Okay, hearing none? Well, I'm gonna do that next, Mary.
Oh, great. I'm just making the motion, so you don't have to ask.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Go ahead. Mary made a motion to make the staff report.
Second.
This is getting very confusing. You want to
Make
make
the
the
motion.
staff report part of the record. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Thank you. Okay. Is there any questions?
I'd like to put in the record, I think I missed the disclosures. Did we go over that yet? I was out of here.
We did.
Okay, so Steve Gannon had a site visit and discussed with the applicant's counsel.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. No questions from the board?
Not for me.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Close public.
Do we have a public hearing?
Yeah, public hearing, sorry. Good idea. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to, that would like to speak on this item? Have you been sworn in, sir? Perfect. Come up and speak, please. Is 2 minutes enough, or do you need more?
It's enough. Good evening, Board. My name is Walker Crago. I am the facilities manager for FHP Manufacturing, which is a joint venture of both Bosch and Carrier. We own 2 properties in that community, and we've been there since the early 1980s. We employ a little bit over 250 associates, many of them from the city of Fort Lauderdale. I just wanted to get on the record that we object to this project. One of the reasons that we object to this project is the traffic in the area. As the gentleman before me showed you, there's only 2 ways of getting into that area. One on Powerline, one on Cypress, but they both merge into a one-way. Our business has a lot of semi-trucks that come in throughout the course of the day to not only deliver parts for our facility, but also to remove the units that we build. And that happens between 6 in the morning to about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, with semi-trucks rolling in through there and family, multi-family development there with individuals with kids and dogs playing out on the street. That's one of the reasons that we object, but one of the things that we wanted to ask the board was, is there any plans of having another entry point into that area? Was there another passage, another 1 or 2 possible passages going into that area in order to relieve that traffic and also create a safer entrance for the trucks coming to our facility?
We can't answer the question. If you'd like to, Mr. Lockery, would you like to answer that question?
Thank you.
Yes, I certainly thank our neighbor for the comments. Couple things. So there are multiple entrances into the site. One of the things you'll see from the site plan, that's the old one, the new one. There is an entrance on the east side from 6th, which is where you see, let me see if I can point at it. Right, yeah, it's hard for you all to see, but I'm sure you can see the gap into the garage, as well as an entrance on the west side, which leads to a connection between the office building and its parking garage and the residential project itself. I will say there are other exits and entrances into the park, the business park itself, including right at this location. There's 2 entrances, as you see on the south, to Cypress Creek, 2 entrances and exits. The Business Owners Association did actually vote on this project, voted in favor of the project, as well as we did have a public participation meeting back in November and had no objections at that time as well.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask, where is the FHP business located? Is it east or west or north, or east or north? It said it's adjacent, right? The gentleman that was speaking.
I'll ask the gentleman to come up and.
Please, yeah.
Sir, do you want to come back up and show us?
Yes, the FHP location.
North. Oh, sorry.
Right here in this back area. So, right.
And you're saying your ingress and egress has to come all the way to the south?
Right. So someone coming in, a truck or, a semi coming in would be able to come in through Cypress or through Powerline. And again, here they both merge into one lane that comes to our back area. And again, the way they exit is the same way they enter. I know there's a property behind us that is, I believe, owned by the local airport. And I know one of the things that we talked about was possibly having a passage through there, but that was never approved at the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, we do have a traffic study that indicates that these roadways will work sufficiently. We will have a plat note amendment that will also get reviewed by Broward County. I want to point out that we are taking out an office user in this park to add the residential. Those hours are not at the same time. And so there is actually, there'll be a little bit different times that you will have cars coming in and out, which we believe works better with a residential use. Not to mention the fact that, as Citrix has been suggesting for years, they would like some of the folks who work at Citrix to be able to live right next door and not have to use the roadways.
Makes sense. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak on this issue, on this topic? Okay, with none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Mary, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say we've been working on this Uptown area for quite a while now, and it's exciting to see this. I've been up to that site a couple times. I hadn't noticed the truck. I'm glad he mentioned it, so hopefully you can make whatever accommodations. But with that, I'm going to move to adopt the resolution and approving it, and that's it.
Do you agree with the findings of fact
Yes.
in the staff report?
Yes.
Okay.
I will second Mary.
And Brad
You want to
seconds
include
it.
all staff conditions?
Pardon me?
Oh, yes,
all
of
staff.
course.
Okay,
You beat me, Sherry.
thank you.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded with all staff conditions. Any question, any discussion on the motion? Okay. Would you, before you call the roll, I'm going to go ahead and read the resolution. A resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a site plan level 3 development permit and a parking reduction for the property located at 701 West Cypress Creek Road and 6261 Northwest 6th Way, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the Uptown Urban Village Northwest zoning district for the development of a 7-story multifamily residential building measuring 69 feet and 6 inches in height with 312 residential flex units, a pet spa, conference rooms, pedestrian plazas, and a pocket park, and approving modifications of the east side setback and north side setback, case number UDP-S21045. Please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Weymouth,
Yes.
Ms. McCartney,
Yes.
Mr. Gannon,
Yes.
Mr. Rotella,
Yes.
Ms. Scott.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Okay, let's move along to, I think, our last item on the agenda. If I'm not mistaken, is case number 6. UDP-T22001. And Adam Schnell, are you in the audience?
That I am. I'm right up here. Hey,
Very good.
Good evening.
You want to go ahead?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Schnell. I'm a planner for the Urban Design and Planning Division. And tonight I'm just going to provide you a brief presentation on the SASRAC Amendment Update. So how everyone's aware is that I provided a presentation on November 17th of 2021 on citywide affordable housing amendments. An aspect of that was modifications to the SASRAC SAE and SAW zoning districts. More specifically, modifications to the height increase request. These modifications included a 10% set-aside requirement and a 30-year deed restriction, as well as expedited review. At that meeting, there were concerns from the public, as well as concerns raised from the Planning and Zoning Board, that these modifications could be perceived as a takings, and that staff should look into alternative incentives to help support development and affordable housing within the South Rack corridor. The Planning and Zoning Board approved the affordable housing regulations, with a caveat being that the South Rack language be removed and be brought back to the Planning and Zoning Board at a later date after alternative incentives were looked into and additional discussions were held with the local civic associations. So staff met and we created an alternative density bonus. Currently in the South Rack, developers can request up to 50 dwelling units per acre, and we're proposing to increase that to 100 units per acre for projects that are proposing affordable housing units. Now, 5% of these units would have to be set aside at 80% of the MFI, and additional 5% of units would have to be set aside at 100% of the MFI. Now, there is some precedent for this. The Uptown Urban Village currently permits the doubling of density when affordable housing units are provided. Secondly, under our Unified Residential Flex Policy, this also permits the doubling of density within regional activity centers and primary commercial corridors. Lastly, I do want to state that all other RACs do not have density requirements, and the form of the building kind of dictates the number of units that can be built in all other areas. So the doubling of the density would actually still be stricter than all other regional activity centers that have master plans. And the reason why we've went this route with the additional density is to help support economic development within the area. Essentially, you need population and people in order to have a viable local economic development corridor. It also helps support economic feasibility of projects. We've also proposed expedited review. So just like last time, we're keeping that in place. So projects that are providing additional affordable housing that are going for the additional density would be capable of a site plan level 2 application with city commission call-up. And projects that are providing affordable housing units that are also applying for additional height would also receive the expedited review. This was presented to the Poinsettia Park Civic Association on 2 separate occasions. On the second meeting, the Poinsettia Park Civic Association voted to support the additional density and the expedited review of projects. On February 15th, we brought this item back to the Planning and Zoning Board, but it was deferred to tonight's meeting until we had the ability to provide a meeting with the Crescent Park Civic Association. That meeting was held on February 22nd of last month. Members of the Harbordale Civic Association as well as the River Oaks Civic Association were also in attendance. Unfortunately, the generalized consensus from that meeting is that they did not support the alternative incentives that staff came up with.
Both Harbordale and Crescent Park,
Correct, and River Oaks as well was in attendance.
they did not support this.
That is correct. They did have some concerns over increased density and traffic.
Did you have the ability to make any changes to get their support? I mean, I've got a letter here.
In general, I can go over some of the concerns that were raised.
I don't want
in
to
that.
finish your report. I don't want to.
Sure, of course. I'm actually,
Sorry.
the next part is actually the discussion.
Okay.
This is a very short presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, just let me say that I got a letter. When did you have that meeting? With Crescent?
February 22nd.
Yeah, so I get a letter today on March 16th. That's a little late.
Yeah, I did not have a lot of time to actually review that letter, but I'll be more than happy. Yeah. to answer
I'm
any questions.
disappointed that, I am disappointed to hear that they're totally not supporting this. I mean. Yeah. Jay wants to speak. Jay?
Thank you, Chair. I definitely want to start off by commending staff for trying to be creative about finding ways to promote affordable housing. That is a primary goal of the county and the city right now, just with how unaffordable housing is. So, great job on trying to be affordable about that. To the chair's point, I believe it sounds that other board members did receive notice, an email perhaps today from Patricia Rathburn, who represented, I believe, the Crescent Park Civic Association. I just want to go through some of the questions that she had in here for my own clarification. And before I do that, I just want to clarify that there is one other RAC where there is a density restriction of 50 units per acre today, and that's RAC RPO, where there also hasn't been anything built. So one of the items that was mentioned by, in the email was that the calculations for the number of units, uses language such as, of the 10% of units set aside as affordable, 5% are required to be set aside for households. So I think that sounds like there's some cleanup there. But just to be clear, for every 100 units that are built, 10 of those would need to be affordable. 5 would be at 80% of AMI, 5 would be at 100% of AMI. Is that correct?
That is correct. I talked with the city attorney's office, and a quick modification, we can just remove the word restricted, and it would then fulfill the intent of the regulation.
Okay, great.
Could you just explain the?
Sure.
Jay, just while you're on that topic, if you can explain the 80%, what the median income levels are for the two sections. So you'd have 5 units at one and 5 at another if you had a 10% of 100, but just what? Thank you.
Sure. Median family income is determined by the metropolitan statistical area. In this particular instance, last year, the MFI was $73,400. So the 80% level, let's just say in the instance of a family of 4, would be around $70,000. This equates to about $1,500 for a two-bedroom rental unit. At the 100% level, the maximum income is $88,000. This equates to approximately a $2,000 rent per month.
Okay, thank you.
And I also do want to clarify earlier, when we did go to the Crescent Park Civic Association, the sentiment of the room was not to support the regulations, but there was no official vote from the neighborhood associations that night.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jay.
So
Thank you.
the next item was just, so they pointed out that, I guess my question is, what is in place in the process to prevent the developer, whoever is proposing to build something, from going through the expedited review and approval process, getting their site plan approval, and then changing their mind about the affordable component? Does the affordable component come in prior to site plan approval, or is this something that is a condition?
It would be a condition of approval that a deed restriction be recorded and affordable housing development agreement be recorded on the records of Broward County in order for that site plan to be approved.
So this is approval for site plan. This is a condition for site plan approval, not a condition for building permits.
For site plan approval.
Okay.
Good evening. Anthony Fajardo, I'm the Director of Development Services for the City of Fort Lauderdale. I think the clarification there is that the units, the market rate units, or any of the other ability you have to go up is contingent on those units, on those affordable units. You cannot have one without the other. The code is very specific that you only get these benefits if you have those affordable rate units, and that calculation is part of the approval, and so it's memorialized as that. And then we have the deed restriction that Adam mentioned.
Okay, so the site plan wouldn't be valid anyway, is what you're saying?
They cannot come and just change it and just remove an affordable rate unit and then expect to get that. So they would have to go through an admin review process. We'd have to take a look at that. It could change the number of units, and it's possible that could happen through the administrative process if they're reducing overall density, and then the ratios still work out for the number of units that are supposed to be allocated per those percentages. So if they reduce the overall density from, let's say, 100 to 80 units, you could recalculate at that point. But you can't just say 100 units and now 10 of them have to be affordable. We don't want to do 10 affordable. We want to do 8 affordable. We want the same project. That won't happen.
Well, what if there's a commercial use as well, and they bypass the conditional use process to get the extra height, and then they back off, from providing the affordable units in lieu of office space?
A conditional use approval as part of the commercial?
For the extra height. So they're getting extra height by including affordable units. They're surpassing the 110 that's allowed as of right, and bypassing the site plan level 4 process, and then they decide, well, instead of doing, this 50 units of residential, I'll do, 6 floors of office, and
No, you cannot change the plan like that. You can't do that today. I mean, that's a substantial change. Staff is only allowed to administratively approve certain things. We generally refer to it as the 5% rule. So we would have to take it back to the approving body, and they would have to possibly resubmit a new plan if they change it too dramatically.
okay, that addresses my concern. One of the questions that was asked by the Crescent Park Association representative is that they aren't clear. Do you get double the density and the height for setting aside 10%? That is correct, right?
So essentially, it would just be overall a 10% set aside. You can go through the expedited review if you're just as well as get the additional density at the same time. There's
You
not,
get both the height and
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That should answer their question. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that was answered on the record. So then when we start getting into the affordable housing payment, they being the neighborhood association, had a concern about what is the actual amount for the payment in lieu as currently drafted in this ordinance before us tonight. What is that based on, and what is that currently?
It's based on the Florida Housing Finance Corporation's average cost of development for garden, mid-rise, high-rise. Last year, that number was approximately $300,000. There's a calculation that Broward County utilizes to come up with the payment in lieu of. That $300,000 is divided by 7, and it's calculated at approximately $42,000. And then you multiply that $42,000 by all of the units within a development. In this particular instance, when you have 100 units, that payment in lieu of comes out to $4.2 million, which that would then be deposited into our Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Okay. And there was some discussion as well about the possibility of this, somehow turning into a $10,000 per unit payment in lieu. Can you just clear the air on?
Essentially,
what is going
there have been some members of the community that have lobbied to try to modify the payment in lieu of fee, but nothing is concrete as of yet. There hasn't been any approval of modifications to the payment in lieu of to date.
Okay. Since we just addressed that point, I just want to express to the board and to the public that I understand that what's before us here tonight is to determine if this incentivizes the development of affordable housing per the comprehensive plan's objectives. And I do have a concern that, at $42,000 per unit, that encourages and incentivizes the inclusion of the affordable housing units, and that at $10,000 it does not. And I made that determination myself based on looking at the difference between what an actual apartment rents for today versus what they would be paying, and multiplying that by 10 and applying a 65% operating margin on that and capping that lost income by 4.5%. And I calculated it approximately $1 million would be lost to the developer for a 100 unit project when they go to sell in terms of value that they would capture. So at $10,000 per unit for 100 units, that's $1 million. And I would choose, if I were them, just by default to do the payment in lieu, because there's no economic benefit in that case. So I would advise, if we can, that we at least include a minimum of $20,000 per unit, or the greater of $20,000 per unit, or whatever is required under the current ordinance, if we can do that. But we can discuss that in a moment. The neighborhood was very concerned that the parking won't be sufficient, and that other benefits that come with affordable housing, such as like reduced parking requirements or landscape requirements, whatever they may be, are those necessary in this ordinance? Can we, limit it to just the height and the density bonus without then allowing even more variances from there by including the affordable units?
Do you mean by that additional incentivization? Could you clarify?
see if I can help a little bit. So the answer is the recommendation that comes from the Planning and Zoning Board is what we will move forward to the City Commission. If you think that that is something that we should reconsider, that can be part of your recommendation. I would say that in terms of parking, we've had many projects throughout the city, primarily in the CRA, because that's where you can do reductions for residential, that have been reduced a substantial amount, and there are not issues with parking. There's a project called Dixie Courts that's in the Northwest neighborhood. They reduced their parking, I might be getting the number wrong, but it was in the hundreds of spaces. And what they did in that case, because it was kind of a test to see what would happen, they allocated areas that were landscaping, and then they said, you know, these are suitable dimensionally to put in additional parking if we ever need it. That was probably about 9 years ago. So we do not see that in a lot of these developments, plus in areas like this, you're talking about the downtown where there are services, amenities, transit, you don't have the same need. But having said that, that is something that you can definitely consider and make part of your recommendation to move this item forward, but we have not seen that that need is actually there in the same level that you would at a typical project.
And you're referring to affordable housing developments?
Yes.
Right. I just want to bring to the board's attention that only 10 of the 100 units will be affordable here. And they're at 80% and 100% of the area median income. So for the 100%, they're still paying $1,650 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. These aren't necessarily the same residents that live in Dixie Court. Okay. And I mean, those are the only questions that I had. Thank you.
So can I ask one other from this list? Oh, I'm sorry, did I jump in?
Go ahead.
Okay, the minimum floor area for the affordable units can be decreased by 10%. I would like to see just a listen, I want to tell you something. When I first came on planning and zoning the first time, I thought we should do a set aside. And I think it must have been in regard to the downtown master area, because I've been wondering, you know, what could we have been talking about that I would be thinking we should have done 10% there. So I applaud you for getting as much through as you have. But I also think that when we're trying to do the affordable housing, we shouldn't make their apartments smaller, because we're making it affordable, particularly when you look at the rents that are on here and the median income in the county. So I actually think this neighborhood has done a really good job of pointing out some things which will make an ordinance that is more successful long-term and fair to the people and that we're trying to attract. And when the South Rack went in, I know there's always been a lot of talk. I know 3 of us have offices within that area, at least 3 of us. So there's always been talk about having housing for teachers and nurses and you know, and many of the professions that we want in our community, but we sometimes make everything so expensive that they can't be there. So that was my one other thing, Jay. Thanks for raising the other questions. I agree with you on the parking and the other things you said, but I would like to see that minimum floor area the same. If there's some other incentive, suggest it, but saying you get a smaller apartment, I have a problem with that.
You don't want it to be smaller.
No, I don't.
I agree. Yeah, I don't want it to be smaller either.
All right, most definitely noted. That language can be changed. It can be the same as well.
Yeah, and I would just add that is designed to be an incentive. It's not a requirement.
Speak up, Anthony, what?
That is designed to be an incentive. It's not a requirement. So if they wanted to do it under the current language, it could be the same. But I hear what you're saying, and I get the intent. So if that's the recommendation, we'll definitely.
Yeah, we'll I guess we'll make a motion at some point, but I agree with you on that.
And then one other thing I just want to bring to the board's attention is that, you know, I guess the difference between, you know, what's in front of us today, it's a difference of use. The form is essentially staying the same, but for, you know, by including the affordable units, it's more likely for forms to fill out at the higher height, which was previously just a conditional use. So I'm just putting that out there. You know, if anybody feels, you know, and if that the height and the density are both needed as a result of the affordable housing inclusion.
I have a question. A high-level question. Did we not approve an affordable housing incentive to other zoning districts recently?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And this high-level question is, why are we treating the South Rack differently? Why can it not be consistent with that one? Maybe I missed that. And then why we carved it out before, and why now we're going to change the South Rack affordable housing?
I mean, the only reason that staff brought it separately is because we requested to do so by the Planning and Zoning Board. Otherwise, we would have moved it all together at the same time with the same regulations.
And as I understand, it was only so to give the neighborhoods a chance to weigh in. That's what I thought.
That's correct.
But now we're talking about changing the South Rack not to be consistent with the rest of the ones that went ahead. Am I right?
If that's the motion and that's what
That,
passed.
that's what we're doing right now.
Wait a minute.
Changing how the South Rack affordable housing works in the zoning versus the rest of the zoning areas. Am I right?
Let me ask the question. Is the affordable housing in all the other districts, areas, the same as what you're proposing for the South Rack?
It's consistent between the one you had already seen, which was the other areas that were inclusive. And then when we separated this out, this discussion is now going down a different path than what that item was already heard. So that item has not been approved. It hasn't been taken to the City Commission yet, so we still have 2 readings to go. So what you would, I think what you're pointing out is what you would effectively be doing is we'd have one item that's recommended to do one thing, and one item that's recommended to do it slightly different based on the discussion that I'm hearing tonight.
And I'm glad Steve brought that up, because I've regretted ever since that vote that we didn't make it all areas going to neighborhood associations. I believe every neighborhood should have the ability to weigh in on what they want their neighborhood to look like. So if anything, I would just suggest sending the areas that we had already approved back to their neighborhoods. I think there's some really good things that have come out of the discussions with the neighborhoods and could make for a stronger affordable housing component, which we desperately need. So I don't know how you handle that, Anthony.
I'm not sure how to handle that either. I mean, we can discuss it internally and see.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the prevailing side. I'm happy to bring it up again, but I just think there are some things, particularly some of the things we've talked about tonight, that would make for a stronger ordinance, and that's ultimately, regardless of whether it takes a month longer, that's ultimately what we need in this city, is a strong ordinance.
I mean,
I will just say again, I first brought this up having a percentage set aside in, almost 20 years ago, and here we are today. So.
I mean, just practically speaking, there is nothing that stops us from doing additional outreach between this meeting and the next meeting. It's just that tonight's item is specific to this for the purposes of the vote that will be taken by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Okay, so would you say we move this ahead with some amendments if we want to make the amendments, and then you would?
It's your pleasure.
I mean, it goes from us to to staff, and then it's going to go to the commission. And there's time in between, correct?
Yeah, generally speaking, so we would need to be able to meet the agenda deadlines for the City Commission, so it's not like it's going to happen immediately.
So the changes
The intent is to do it as quickly as possible.
So the changes that may come out of this meeting will not be consistent with the other areas. It'll just be for the South Rack. Is that correct?
Right.
In other words, we don't have.
Yes, that's the item that you have in front
So
of
we
you.
don't have one ordinance that is used everywhere. We're going to have one for the South Rack, and the other areas, it's going to be inconsistent, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Am I correct?
Once it was bifurcated and it became 2 separate items, that's where you ended up here today. You have one item that you've already voted on, one that you deferred.
And the one that it was bifurcated because of lack of communication, or the neighborhood felt like
Well, if there's,
they hadn't had a chance to weigh in on it. Is that
If I
correct?
could weigh in a little bit, Chair. So originally, when we had the discussion, some members of the audience discussed how in the South Rack, there weren't enough incentives or the same type of incentives because the regulations do differ a little bit. For example, there is not a density maximum in that area, there is not a maximum density in other areas. And in this one, this was something that was brought up as something that was more restrictive. So in some ways, there is some variation between those different areas. Yes, they were uniform and they were tied together, and we looked at each one distinctly. But those were the types of arguments that we heard that night, and that's originally why we went back and looked at the ordinance and put some of these additional incentives to address that. And then, of course, we also reached out to the neighboring association, Poinciana Park, obviously being the one the most impacted because that's where the regulation zoning district actually overlays. And then we did the additional outreach to Crescent Park and the other neighborhoods.
I appreciate that Pat sent this letter with all this information, but I'm really surprised no one's here.
Well,
Oh, there is.
That's
And Robert's here. Yeah.
Bill just brought that up to me, and I was thinking the same thing.
Chair,
Yes.
if there is an improvement that we have discovered between when we approved the other racks and the one tonight, we can, since that still hasn't even gone to the commission, in theory, we could send a communication to the commission to also consider the same changes to those. No?
Good. Yes, we can.
Chair Scott? It's
Yes.
John.
Yes, Mr.
I
Bracco.
do have a short memory, but when it was presented to us initially, I thought that they were treating some of the northern districts of the RAC differently, and there were more incentives. And we hadn't heard about this in the South RAC. There was no outreach with us, and I'm the one who pulled it from the agenda because I'm very involved in that group. And I think what the intent was initially was to kind of equalize it, and that's what we're talking about tonight. I don't recall, because my memory is short, but there were greater incentives in the other racks that we pushed along. And for whatever reason, the South rack was a little more restrictive. The height bonus density was given as a conditional use, so that was the initial incentive given, but that was done through a conditional use process anyway. So it wasn't much of an incentive, and that's, I think it was Courtney Callahan, the attorney, who spoke on that and educated everybody on that. So I was the outspoken one, and I said, hey, this
It was
is
inconsistent.
treated differently, the South Rack.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be. I think we should talk to the neighborhood and find out what they want. Obviously, I have an office in the neighborhood. Mary has an office in the neighborhood. I think Mr. Cohen does. And we know the neighborhood. We've seen it. It hasn't really developed over there yet, with the exception of Whole Foods, which they did it by the grace of God. You know, they're in the B1, so they did a lot of different things there, and I appreciate what they did there. But we just haven't really seen a lot, and I thought it'd be a good idea to create incentives that were compatible with the other districts.
Yeah, and I definitely, I apologize if I misled based on that conversation, but what you have is a challenge with zoning districts that have different requirements across the city, right? So in the Northwest RAC, we had a different standard for increasing height that was already established. In the South RAC, if you recall in 2014, when we established the South RAC zoning district, there was the determination, A, to put in a density cap, which we didn't have there before, and B, to artificially lower the height except for these other methods to request, which wasn't something that was part of it. So it was a little bit of a challenge to get it to align in a way that made it consistent. We think we did it pretty well, or got to a point where it's workable, and based on the information and the guidance that we received from the county as well as the directives we got from the city commission. So I appreciate the clarification on that, because you're right, it is different depending on what zoning district you go to.
Why don't we,
Is that bad?
open the public hearing?
We sat here and we talked about Uptown and what we could do for affordable housing there. We sat here and talked about the Northwest RAC, what we could do for affordable housing there. I'm not sure every area, you know, sometimes there's an advantage to having the people in a neighborhood talk. In this case, you've had 4 neighborhoods weigh in on what they feel will help to create affordable housing in their neighborhoods. And I don't know. I think that's a good thing. And Jay's coming, and Jay's neighborhood in Tarpon River is also contiguous with this area, right? Or some of your neighborhood in it.
The South Rack?
Yeah.
Not really.
But you're somewhat.
I mean, yeah, it's an Andrews Avenue corridor, right? So yeah, you're correct. I was corrected.
Yeah, I think it's split by the Tarpon River.
Yeah.
So anything north of the Tarpon River should be.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we open the public hearing?
Oh,
From the
sorry.
public?
I didn't know we hadn't. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, have you been sworn in? Yes. Perfect.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ted and Sarah. I was here, I don't know if you remember, a while back on the Ismonda cluster on Southwest 9th Avenue that turned into the Ismonda Gardens. And I was upset about that because of it was just going to be 8 units. And the more traffic it was going to have on 9th Avenue and the impact on Southwest 9th Avenue. And now we're talking about there's already 1 unit built that's right by the new firehouse there, and that's 130 units. I mean, they're knocking down houses in our area and building 2 clusters. And then there was the Ismonda thing with 8 clusters. Now we're talking 130 apartments. I mean, this is Crescent Park. Crescent Park is a residential area. I mean, how we can just start cramming all this stuff along Andrews Avenue, and why only Andrews Avenue? I mean, why is it all going to be on this, whatever you call the South Quarter or whatever, but on Andrews Avenue? I mean, I think the city kind of missed the base on Andrews Avenue. I mean, it could have been another Flagler Village. I mean, we proved that there can be business down there with Tap 42, with Bar Rita. I mean, people will drive there to go to restaurants, to go to places. And we're just going to put all this affordable housing. I mean, I can't believe we're now saying Crescent Park and Dixie Courts in the same sentence. I mean, Crescent Park is one of the oldest residential, tree-lined, beautiful areas. And now it seems like we're just the city and the zone just trying to cram things in there. And just, I mean, you can't widen Andrews Avenue. You can't widen Davie Boulevard. 9th Avenue is 2 lanes, and you want to just keep building and building and building. If that's not good enough, now we need to go higher. You know, I mean, come on. This area is a beautiful sacred area to Fort Lauderdale. I mean, even on your own websites, the city of Fort Lauderdale, I mean, it just praises the neighborhood of Crescent Park and River Oaks as far as how beautiful it is and the residential it is. And to say that I was at that Crescent Park Civic Association meeting, and to say it was not well received is an understatement. I mean, it got a little testy there for a while. And I'm really surprised that there is not other people here to speak with the concerns they had that night. Tomorrow night is the River Oaks Civic Association, and trust me, I'll be there, and I'll let them know that how disappointed, because Nancy Long sent emails out to everybody telling when this meeting was and what the agenda was going to be and to turn out. And so it's just a little disappointing. But this, why always Crescent Park? Now that's just seems to me just the place to build now. You know, instead of just keeping what we have, it's a residential area. I mean, plus Crescent Park Elementary was already built with portables when it was brand new. I mean, now what are we just going to put more portables out there? Because these kids are going to have to go to school somewhere, and it's all traffic. I mean, railroad tracks across there, so they're just going to be coming across. We all know what's happening with the railroad track situation these days, and it just seems out of place. You have the one built there. Check that off on the mark. Crescent Park did our deeds. We got that building there. It's already built. And these are kind of aesthetically ugly buildings, for one thing. I mean, it's not like you're coming in there with nice green space and nice. I mean, these buildings are just basic. And I just think we're missing the mark on where it's put, on what could be done to lower Andrews Avenue, and how it could be made into another Flagler Village. And you know, because it's proven. Tap 42 does great business. Bar Rita does great business. It's proven people will come there. People will drive to South Andrews Avenue, you know, to enjoy themselves. And just now, just going wall to wall with these whatever you want to call them, it's just a waste of beautiful space, and it's really just hurting a beautiful neighborhood, a legendary neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale. I mean, I was born in 1956 in Broward General, right there. I went to Crescent Park Elementary School, went to Rogers Junior High School.
You're young.
Went to Stranahan High School. You know, I mean, I lived in that area. That's my area, you know, and it's a residential area. It's residential.
I don't want to be rude, but
I know you.
I'm giving you more time, and I
Thank you
think
very
it's
much.
great that you came out and expressed how you feel.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No, you're very welcome.
I just want to make a comment for the
Should we
board.
close the public hearing first?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Lockery? How many minutes do you need?
I'm sorry?
How many minutes do you need?
Just the 3 minutes for, well, I'll extend on, so I'll try to do it in 3. You can cut me off. And I just
will.
want to, I don't have a specific dog in this fight, as they say, but I have been watching what the city's been doing with affordable housing and also what's been going on with the South Rack since it was created. I was involved with many of you sitting on those boards when it was created. And one of the things about the South Rack, it has never moved forward, with the exception of one affordable housing project. That's really it, and some restaurants. You know, the Whole Foods that was developed at the corner of 17th Street and Federal doesn't have South Rack zoning. The South Rack zoning that is right on Andrews is much more restrictive zoning than even a general commercial corridor. If you're on Sunrise Boulevard, Oakland Park, Federal Highway, 17th Street, your zoning is more liberal than the South Rack zoning. So that makes the South Rack very unique already from the other racks, where you're usually entitled to something more than you would be allowed on a commercial corridor. You know, the gentleman is referring to Flagler Village, and it's a great example, but I'm not sure that folks really appreciate what Flagler Village is. It is a rack that most of that product, that 7-story product, is about 250, 275 units per acre. You know, when people want Flagler Village, it's much, much more dense than 50 units per acre. So one of the things that I think the city is doing a good job with this is really, you know, attacking 2 problems or 2 issues. Number one, we know that there's an affordable housing issue in Broward County. We know that the city of Fort Lauderdale has committed to working towards that. Unfortunately, the state legislature has tied the hands of the city of Fort Lauderdale. And to Mary's point, the city is no longer able to just say you have to build a certain percentage of your units with affordable housing. State law says you can do it, but then the city has to pay the developer for that loss of value. So the city doesn't have a lot of options of forcing it on someone. But one thing they are allowed to do in the statute is to create an incentive, a true incentive, to say, if you want to get your extra density, if you want your additional height, then we want you to do some affordable housing. That does 2 things. Number one, it is a true, I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if there'll be developers lining up, but it certainly creates a true incentive where maybe somebody will. Maybe somebody will come in and say, you know what? For 10% affordable units, I will get these additional units. I can make the project pencil out. That's number one. We'll get more affordable units. They won't be in one project. They'll be spread out in all the projects that take advantage of that. And number 2, we'll finally see Andrews Avenue and that corridor begin to get redeveloped. Again, you know, Whole Foods went forward. I worked on that project because it wasn't in South Rack zoning. If it had been, it wouldn't have been built. So I do want to make that point. One other comment that Mary made, which was really astute, is the 10% as the size of the unit issue. But I just ran some math, and the way it's worded, I don't know where this wording came from, but I think staff probably had reasons and did some good work on it. And I just want to point out one discrepancy. The way it reads actually is that the affordable housing units that you do, each required affordable housing unit must be no smaller than 10% less than the average gross floor area of all bonus units in the development project. So 10% less than the average. Just as a point of clarification, I just did the quick math. On tonight's project that you approved earlier, the one that I was working on, the units range from about 600 square feet up to about 1,400 square feet. The average unit size was 945 square feet. So 10% of 945 is 851. What I'm trying to say is the 851 unit is still bigger than 40% of the units in the development. So it's not that it's 10% lower than the smallest unit. The way it's worded, it's 10% lower than the average unit, which at least in most cases is still going to be bigger than the smallest units. Does that make any sense? In other words, the units that are restricted from affordable are likely to still be significantly larger than the smallest unit, which is market rate. So I just want to point that out for whatever it's worth. And there's probably a lot of items like that.
Thanks, Robert.
But I do think, and this is our chance to create incentives. If there's all of a sudden, you know, it's going crazy and the city wants to slow it down, that could work. But we know what's happening right now is not working. We're not seeing the affordable projects units in the market rate, and we're not seeing any real residential development other than purely affordable housing down in the South Rack. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Jackie.
Jackie,
Oh, can I just
Go
say-
ahead.
Hold on, where are we?
Just one, we're not closed yet, so let's,
Right.
right?
Okay, is there any other speakers on this item? If not, I'd like to close the public hearing.
So
Go ahead.
some of the things I was going to say, I think Robert articulated probably much better than I would have. But I think that, you know, when we talk about affordable housing, I think neighborhoods get, I think, a certain way, or they feel a certain way when we talk about affordable housing. I think that's why we decided to change the word to workforce housing, because affordable housing sounds, you know, so not good to some neighborhoods. I think that what we need to do is exactly, I mean, maybe this isn't the perfect solution, but I think it's a good solution. I think that the area itself is changing very quickly. John pointed out, we all have places around that area, and the federal courthouse is going up. I think that's going to be 17 or 18 stories. So as you go down in that area now, I mean, when I first opened in off of Davie, I mean, those were all single-family houses. Those were people that were pulling into the house off of Davie, and I think there was probably, I would say, 70% of them were single-family houses, and sprinkled among them were, you know, bail bondsmen and a couple other little businesses. But for the majority of it, they were single-family houses, and that whole area, Rose Drive, that whole area was single-family houses. The problem is that the city is changing. There's a lot of neighborhoods that are great neighborhoods that, you know, get, I think, up in arms when you talk about affordable housing and also putting up developments, because it's not retaining that same. Number one is I don't think they like the word affordable housing, but besides that, I think also it doesn't retain that small town feel that we all, I think everyone here probably moved here because of that reason, because it was a kind of a city, small town feel, but we're a city, and we're expanding, and people want to live here and work here and stay here, and you can't shut out. You know, you need to come up with a solution for people that are working here that can't afford $3,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. And most of the developments that we okayed over the past 10 years, most of those apartments right now are charging $3,000 for a $2,800. Yes, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Can we,
Can I say something?
yes,
We're talking about finding a solution to affordability of housing. This is not an affordable housing complex. Not that there's anything wrong with that. This is a strategy that's being used nationwide to address being able to provide housing for everyone and to make it something that people can afford. By putting 10%, if we had done that when they built the downtown, I don't want to freak anybody out here, but if we had done that, we would have a much larger base of housing. And in fact, we talked about it at the time, but I guess as a city, we weren't ready for it. This is an approach. And when you look at what the prices of this would be, even with that, and what the median income is, and you think about those teachers at Crescent Park and those teachers at Harbordale and the nurses at Broward General and so many of the people that work in our offices, what we're really doing is doing what I know people talked about, and we've been in the same office building for 25, 30 years, what people talked about when that corridor was in the 90s and in the 80s. They talked about being able to have housing for people who locally here. I worry that all of our children will be priced out of Fort Lauderdale because we haven't addressed affordability. And I think one way to do it is to spread it all over the city and not just concentrate it in one or two pockets. So I love that this has been through so many different neighborhoods, because I think they've added a lot of really valuable things to it. I hope we adopt some of what Pat's letter says, and then maybe that'll provide a model for the rest of the city.
maybe you could make a motion.
Okay, well.
I have a question about the unit sizes. Can you please, staff, explain how the affordable unit sizes would need to relate relative to market rate sizes in this ordinance?
So, as eloquently stated earlier, essentially the average size of the affordable unit just has to be no smaller than 10% of the average market rate unit, meaning that if the average size is 1,000 square feet, then it can't be less than 10% smaller, so 900 square feet. So it actually does keep the average size a little larger than potentially all other units within a building.
Okay, so you take the average size of all the market rate units, and the affordable units can't be smaller than 90% of that amount?
So if the average square foot's 1,000, then it just can't be smaller than 10%. So this is actually
Okay.
in lockstep with the current county language.
Understood. Okay, I mean, I think it would be more appropriate for it to be at least equal to, but I mean, 10% isn't like so low that it concerns me.
I agree with you about making it equal to, Jay. So if I were making a motion, I would put that in there with
I'd love to hear a
many of
motion.
other Pat's things. Okay, I'll make a motion
May-
unless John wants to make it.
May I speak on
Assistant
that?
City Attorney Dean Wayne Spence, if I may comment on that. So the language is almost verbatim taken from the Broward County Land Use Plan Policy 2.16.4. So in your consideration of consistency with the Broward County Land Use Plan, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't think we need to, be different than the land use plan. I think that it'd be better if it were at least equal to the average, but it's up to the board.
You can be more restrictive, but I'm just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Thank you. I understand the consistency there.
Okay, do one of you have a motion?
I'm happy to, but I think
Can-
John
can
wanted
I-
to say something.
Can I voice
So-
my concern
Please do.
with the 10%? It just, playing with numbers, you need a little fluff in there. And I'm just speaking as an architect. I don't know how this is really going to play itself out, but, most people are going to have a lot of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, some sort of blend, and the average is going to be in the middle. So that other unit is going to be kind of an odd middle-of-the-road unit, I would think, to meet that. They're going to meet it anyway because they're probably going to lean on the side of doing a larger unit. They're not going to try to whittle it down and create this unique unit in a building because as a designer, I will tell you we generally like to stack the units. There's efficiencies in plumbing, all the plumbing is stacked, it's covered up. I can't imagine some crazy architect out there saying, hey, let's just make these affordable units.
That is so true.
90%.
So true.
Which is crazy. I think it's there as more of a safety feature so that nobody does something crazy like that. But I think 10% is probably a good float number of the average. So
It's
that's
just not
my pieces
practical,
of-
is it? John, it's just not practical
No,
building a building.
know how I
Let's
do
make
it.
all these 90 feet and we'll make these 100. I mean, what a disaster.
I mean, I think it would be very simple for you to look at what the average square footage is in general at a property and just pick which ones are large enough that they are equal to or greater than that, that number, without having to modify the size of the units to, be exactly equal to 90% of
Chair.
the average.
Yes.
Yeah, the way the language is written, at least from my perspective, I mean, again, these are all incentives to try to get the developer to build these. The way that Robert has explained it, seems, in every respect, very reasonable. The developer is going to get less rent for these 10 units. So in every respect, to force him to have to build a unit that's 100%, 90% isn't a whole lot less, but to force them to build 100%, at the end of the day, incentivizing someone to do this and getting more affordable units on the market for all the reasons that we talked about would seem to me to be the critical component. And now, if we go back to saying you got to build at 100%, every unit is pretty much got to be the same. I mean, I think you just gave one more reason for him not to do the project.
Okay.
If I could just add something, maybe this would help, and I think maybe you said this and I might not have caught it, but another way of thinking about it is it actually protects the affordable units because it's making sure that they don't go down to a level that is not suitable for habitation. I mean, we have minimum housing requirements, they're pretty small. You know, our RMM 25, I think you can go down to 400 square feet. And in cases like this where you have that average of all the market rate units, you're actually protecting those units. So from that perspective, you know, you can look at it as you're saying they could be smaller, but there's another way to, it's meant to ensure, and I think that's one of the reasons, primary reasons the county put it in, that you had units that were a suitable size, so you didn't get a developer who shortchanged the affordable component.
Okay, I'm ready to make a motion. I'm leaving that out.
I just want to make one, I agree with what John Barranco said, and I agree with what Bill said. I think we need to move this on.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to move that we adopt it with the following modifications. One is to clear up that language on the 5% equals 10%. The next one is to make sure that when we're talking, that there's not 10% for this, 10% for this, 10% for this, but that it's a 10%. If I'm reading correctly what Pat's number 3 is. You get that?
Yes.
Okay. And that parking be addressed, because I think that I think that parking could be a problem. We may not want people to have cars, and I have 6 children, so that's just we may not want people to have cars, but they are going to have cars. And I think it's realistic that neighborhoods want that parking part addressed. I don't know how you do that, Anthony, because I don't have a specific, but that's my motion. And if anybody else wants to add anything or take anything out, I'm happy to accept it.
I think we should include that the payment in lieu will be the greater of $20,000 per unit or whatever is required under the code at that time.
So you're seconding my motion and adding that in.
Adding that.
And what is that going to do, Jay?
Well, what it's going to do is, you know, we need to evaluate what's in front of us here based on whether or not it incentivizes affordable housing, the development of affordable housing, and I've run the math and determined that a developer will lose $1 million if they, you know, include the affordable housing when they go to sell. So if the payment only ends up being $10,000 per unit, their choice is pay $1 million now and not have to do anything with affordable housing, or include the affordable housing, have to go through all these agreements with the city to, you know, with how it's going to work, have operational inefficiencies when they run their building with 2 different types of rental charging systems and processes.
It's going to be more
correct.
of an
It will no longer be an incentive, in my opinion, based on conservative numbers. Unless we think as a board that the payment in lieu, I mean, I think the there's no longer an incentive is my point. Thank you.
If I may, Assistant City Attorney Dwayne Spence. So the same policy 2.16.4 subsection 6 is where that language with regards to the payment in lieu is taken from. So that's the Broward County Land Use Plan, and it states affordable unit requirements may be satisfied via a in lieu payment to the Broward County Affordable Housing Trust Fund based on the Florida Housing Finance Corporation's most recent total development costs per unit based limitations as updated by the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. The intent of the adoption of that language is to capture the cost of actual construction of the units and using an agency that is charged with calculating that on a ongoing basis moving forward. And so staff adopted a similar formula, essentially the same formula to incorporate into this ordinance, so that it's a fluctuating number based on changing conditions, but it is not arbitrary in that it's set by an agency that regulates this type of thing.
And it sounds like that the calculation today comes to $42,000 per unit. So I'm suggesting the greater of $20,000 per unit or whatever is required today.
Okay, Mary, do you accept that?
I do accept
could
Anthony
just-
has his hand up.
Yes,
so.
I just want to add that, and what you adopt today would, if adopted by what you recommend today, if adopted by the city commission, is what would be in the ordinance. I don't know that there's really a need to have a range because the calculation would be static. So, like, as Mr. Spence said, it's based on that formula that we got from the county that we copied, but I don't know that you really, any change to that formula would have to come back to this board as an amendment to the current ordinance.
But we're not suggesting a change. I'm not suggesting a change to that formula. I'm suggesting the greater of 20,000 per unit and that formula, same formula.
I just don't know if there's a rational nexus with doing
Chair.
that based on the formula that we have.
I got you, Bill.
Okay.
Bill Rotella?
From my perspective, I don't even want to introduce, at least for me personally, I don't even want to introduce the idea of 20,000 when 42,000 is kind of the buyout number. I mean, that's kind of how we got here because somebody said 10,000. So if 42,000 is the number and the cost of construction is going up, it's likely that that number is going to continue to go up. So at the end of the day, that $4.2 million for this project, which goes into the trust fund, at the end of the day, we sit on a couple of boards where this comes up a lot, and I don't want to begin to profess to be a specialist or even have, but generally, the more money that's in that trust fund, the more affordable housing projects that can get built. In the way that we've understood the numbers, and Mike, you could concur with this, but you know, for every 100 units, it's about a $5 million subsidy. So for every time that somebody does a buyout at nearly $5 million, you could go build 100 affordable housing units because there'd be a $5 million subsidy at $50,000 a door. Is that even close to right, Robert? You know,
4.2
close to
million.
right. So I don't want to, me personally, I don't want to introduce a $20,000 number, or as Anthony has suggested, I don't think we want to create a range, especially unless the range was something higher, but not something lower.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, I'm suggesting the greater of, so it would still be that same 5 million that you, in that case.
But you know
I think
what,
it
I'm
makes
just
it
thinking, Jay,
convoluted. I
we
think the
can
way that Mary
always
stated
amend
it.
it.
Wait a minute. We got two people talking. Mike?
I'm just saying, adding this language convolutes the whole thing, and I think it muddies it up and makes it more confusing. I think you leave it the way that it was presented and leave it at that.
But are you okay with the other three changes?
I mean, the only concern that I have is I'm supposed to evaluate if this incentivizes affordable housing, and I'm being told there's all these initiatives to lower that 42,000 a unit to 10,000 a unit.
Okay, let's do this. Let's make a motion.
You just did.
Okay, let's, Jay, do you accept Jay's?
I accept Jay's, but I just want to say one thing. We can always amend this once we get something to the commission. I really like what's come from these neighborhoods, including what John has worked with our neighborhood on. I think it's a much stronger ordinance. I would say right now it's 42,000. I wouldn't want to give anybody an excuse to make it less. So and Jay, you're young, so you will watch this. Just getting this through our city would be such a major accomplishment. So.
Okay, I'll second Mary's existing motion
And you're withdrawing what you said?
without my proposed.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion, or can we vote?
Let's vote.
Okay, let's call the roll.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Scheckman?
Yes.
Mr. Barranco?
Yes.
Ms. Furtick?
Yes.
Mr. Weymouth?
Yes.
Ms. McCartney?
Yes.
Mr. Gannon?
Yes.
Mr. Rotella?
Yes.
And Ms. Scott?
Yes. Okay, that concludes our agenda, folks. I just want to report to the board that thank you, the communication that we did to the city commission in reference to the safety issue regarding the FEC Railroad was taken very positively. And Commissioner Sorensen and Commissioner Moranis want to work with the FEC as partners and try to get them to do some type of barrier or connect Lauder Trail, but it was taken very positively. So that's the communication. Okay, if there's no other business, meeting adjourned.